We're about to... Oh, we'll go without him. We're almost about to stand.
Is Jeff here?
No, he's just checking his phone.
Have you already sent him a message, Councillor Dave?
Not yet, but I have a few lined up.
Gary, is Jeff down there somewhere?
Both go. Jeff's running, Mark's walking.
Trip. Councillors and staff and members of the public, please stand. We're going to, prior to starting the meeting, our Kamātua Tame Pakaia will carry out a blessing, and then Reverend Phil Wilson will do a reading prior to opening the meeting. Then following that, we'll stay standing and we'll recognise the passing of John Mortimer, who with his wife gifted Taitua Arboretum to the city and the community with a minute's silence as well. So I'll hand over to Tame. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Koro matua, members of the council, members of the public, those presenting in this 10-year plan, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Tuatahi ke hāpai ngā kōrero ki te matua nui i te rangi, kia uhia te wairua tapu, me te rangi māria i rungi i o koutou katoa e whakahaere i te tāne o kirikiri roa, tau tana aroha i rungi i te koro matua hoki, i rungi i a tātou katoa i tēnei ata. E te atua kaharawa ana i mātou e tuku whakawhetai, whakamoimeti kia koe, kia tau mai tō wairua i wainganui i a mātou i tēnei rangi, i tēnei ata. Arahi mātou i rungi i te tika me te pono, ko koe tō mātou piringa, ko koe te tokatū moana, ana i mātou e whakawhetai i rungi te ingoa tō mātou kai whakaora. Arahi hoki te kengi, kia tui tui te iwi, kia pupuri te ihi te mana te wehi te tapu. Te hunga ko whetū rangitia, hoki atu koutou ki te wairua, ki Hawaii ki nui, moi mai ruti i te ariki. Kia tātou e huitahi nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ka huri taku mihi i tēnei wā ki te amorangi ki tō tātou minita, waiho mana ngā kupu o te paipera, hei arahi i rungi ngā kupu o te wairua. No reira huri noa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. I'm just going to pass on to our pastor this morning. He's got some wise words for us today. I had some, but I think his ones are a little bit better than my ones, so I'll pass on that to our chap.
Kia ora taime. Kia ora tātou. I have a reading today from the writings of a 7th century Greek monk by the name of John Climacus. And he had this to say when he was writing about the well-known book of Ecclesiastes. He said, if there is indeed a time for everything under heaven, then we ought to examine the matter, and we should try to do everything in proper season. For those entering this struggle, there is a time for serenity and a time for passion. There is a time for tears and a time for hardness of heart. There is a time for obedience and a time for command, a time for fasting and a time for eating, a time for the battle against our enemy and a time for peace. There is a time for the soul's upheaval and a time for calm in the mind, a time for heart sorrow and a time for joy of spirit, a time for teaching and a time for listening, a time for effort and a time for rest, a time for stillness and a time for undistracted distraction, a time for unceasing prayer and a time for honest service. Proud zeal must therefore never be allowed to deceive us, and we should never strain now for what will come in its own good time. Since winter is not the time for the summer's goods, nor seed time the proper season for the harvest. There is a time for the sowing of labours and a time to reap the astounding fruits of grace. And if it were otherwise, we would not receive in due time whatever was proper to the season. God, in his unspeakable providence, has arranged that some receive the reward of their toils even before they set to work, others while actually working, and others again when the work was done, and still others not until the time of their death. Let the reader ask themselves which one of these was made the more humble.
A moment's silence now to recognise the passing of John Mortimer. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Council 10-year plan meeting with an open agenda. It is the 31st of May 2018. It's 9:46 a.m. Firstly, I just want to say that comms will be taking photos in the chamber today. So just if you see that happening, just accept that, please. And I also just want to say today that, so we'll go to apologies. So I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager for that.
Andrew, why are there photos being taken? There's photos of all elected members on file, I believe.
Because we've got a member who's passed away and we've got a new member here, and the City Council doesn't have a photo of us around the table together as a new unit.
Well, we have our official council photos.
They'd like a photo to use, including the whole council, with everybody here. So
Sorry, but for what purpose? I don't know. We haven't had that before. Are you saying for media releases or for comms?
Yeah, for comms to use as they need to at the appropriate time when they feel fit. So they need a photo on file. So I'm comfortable that they do that. So
I'm not, because I'm not understanding how that photo would be used by the organisation.
Look, we're all public. We're all public.
Yes, no. I understand that, but
excuse me, I'm chairing the meeting. We're all public figures here,
yes.
And I've given permission for comms to come and take photos. I'm just informing you of what's coming. So thank you. So we'll now move on to apologies. Are there any apologies?
Oh, sorry, I will be leaving a bit early.
Okay.
My apology.
So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor James. All those for? Any against? Carried. Confirmation of agenda. I'll pass over to Democracy Manager.
Kia ora tātou. Welcome everyone. This morning, in confirming the agenda, would you please note the following. That debate will be 2 minutes with an extension of 1 minute if required, and noting that for the final resolution of the meeting, or the final item of the meeting, debate will be 5 minutes. That item 6, notice of motion from Councillor Kesson in relation to the 9th floor balustrade, has been withdrawn with his agreement from this agenda and will be taken at the extraordinary council meeting of the 26th of June 2018 to allow this meeting to be focused on 10-year plan. Thank you, Councillor Kesson. And that item 8, proposed development contributions deliberations report, is to be taken after item 5, so moved up the order of the agenda. And so that will be taken directly after the minutes of the 11th to 17th May meeting. Thank you.
Question, if I may. The 2 minutes, then 1 minute extension, if required, how will that be policed? Because obviously everyone will talk for as long as they can, I
So
assume.
it'll be timed and the bell will ring at 2 minutes.
And then will we say extension, those for, those against,
Yeah,
or will it just be expected that you can go on?
At that stage, we technically should move an extension, yes, for the last minute.
So we'll go through that formal process.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then at the 3 minutes, yeah.
Otherwise, it's just 3 minutes.
Yeah, at the 3 minutes, that's it. And I'm...
Stopping at 3.
Yeah, and the Democracy Manager will remind me, there was one at the last meeting where it ran over and it was my fault. I just didn't realise that had gone over. So, and I'll be running the meeting very tightly. Questions are to be questions, not opinions, and not an opinion or not setting the scene for the question. So I'll be actually, if I feel that somebody's using politics or setting the scene for the question instead of just asking the question, I will be moving on to the next member. So it will be very tight. I'm not prepared to let politics and debates come into question time. We've got a big 2 days and we need to just keep the meeting moving.
The agenda, please. Thank you. You're moving item 8 up, did you say, to behind the minutes? Can I ask what the rationale for moving that is? Oh, I've just ordered myself in notes, all in order of what the agenda came out originally. I just wondered why the reason for, and I know that public out there who've been looking at the agenda will also have taken an interest and maybe want to log in live, etc., around certain items. So I'm a bit uncomfortable with something of so importance being moved forward without the public having the opportunity to necessarily adapt to that.
Thank you, General Manager Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. So the DC, the Development Contributions Policy, is coming before the 10-year plan deliberations because the decisions we make on the Development Contributions Policy essentially affect the financial assumptions that go into the 10-year plan. So it was always the intention to do the DC policy first.
Yeah, I do accept that. However, we have publicly notified an agenda, and all of those people sitting out there interested in this particular item will not be aware that this is now moved up. And I do think it could still be taken in the same order, but I may be a lone voice in that. I think with something so important, we have to be transparent to the public and give them the chance to tune in.
Okay, so do we have a mover for the agenda? I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Mark. All those for? Any against? Excuse me, I've asked for the vote, no talking. All those for? Excuse me. All those for? Any against? Can you raise your hand, please? Can your staff call the vote, please?
Excuse me, Andrew. I thought it. So, motion carried with Councillor Southgate dissenting.
Okay, declarations of interest. Okay, Councillor Siggy.
Yeah, look, I do not actually have a conflict, but I put a submission in and I retracted it, and I listened to all the submissions, and I'm here with an open mind.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff.
Look, I thought I'd better raise this after a discussion with the governance manager. Just in regard to the Hamilton Gardens charging issue, which will come up at some point. I have a family member who works 1 day a week at the Hamilton Gardens Cafe, and seeing as the cafe owner has expressed strong views about the charging issue, I just thought I should at least raise that. I don't regard it as a conflict as anything that's going to affect my conduct or views or voting.
Okay, and I'll be stepping out of the room for the discussion and debate on CV, going to CVs, and the Deputy Mayor will take the chair for that. I'm taking a conservative view on this. I don't believe I have a conflict, but I'm taking a conservative view to protect council. So I'll be step out of the room for that. And I also have a conflict on WA when that comes up, so I will be stepping out of the room for that, and the Deputy Mayor will be taking the chair on that item as well. You'll see when it comes up. It's a growth cell. So. Okay, public forum. Sorry. Any other conflicts?
Councillor Southgate.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just note, I don't think it's a biggie, but I note that I home host as an Airbnb provider, probably 4 times a year, I have to say, but nevertheless, I am in that position, and there is one very small item that may or may not come up around rates in Airbnb, and I just want to put it on the record anyway.
And my potential conflict is also
Yes. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
my potential conflict. I also note a potential conflict. In relation to Airbnb.
Okay, anybody else? No. Councillor Mark? I'm not necessarily going off the board today, so don't count on the board system, okay? So, anybody else? Yes, Councillor Orr.
Just want to record the fact that my wife is a volunteer at Citizens Advice Bureau. She's not a member of the committee, but I know that that group has been quite vocal about the sale of St Peter's Hall. I don't regard that conflict to be sufficient for me to remove myself when that is being discussed.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor James.
Yeah, I'm clearly at the end of the list, so you go ahead, Councillor Pesson.
No, I was just pointing to you to say you're up there.
Is there anybody else who has a conflict to declare? Angela?
Well, gosh, thank you so much. I just had a question. I wasn't clear on Mayor Andrew, I was a bit confused on what you said around stepping out of the room for, was it the CV discussion? You didn't declare a conflict or an interest, but you were stepping out of the room. That was a bit confusing to me. Did I hear that correctly?
In the interests of playing it safe, I'll be stepping out of the room for that item.
But do you, look, these questions I'm raising are because, you know, I'm concerned about council, and clearly you've identified a risk. So do you...
No, I don't consider
Other than stepping out of the room, I mean, all elected members can do that then, you do need to register an interest or something, don't you? Have we had legal advice on this?
What's your point of order?
Point of order is that conflicts of interest are declared by, or issues relating to it are declared by members and are not to be questioned.
Anything else you'd like to add, Councillor Angela? Okay.
You're not declaring a conflict, though.
I'll be stepping out of the room for that item. Okay, public forum. There is nobody in the public forum. Okay, so we'll now move forward to, are there any minutes? Yeah. Yep, so pass over to Leanne for the minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. So with item 5, elected members' confirmation of the minutes, can you please note that people have brought to our attention since the agenda was published a few minor matters. So we have clarified comments in relation to submissions made by Peter Boss as an individual and Suzanne and Harry O'Rourke, individual, on the draft 10-year plan, Peter Boss on draft development contributions policy, and there have been some minor corrections to the spelling of names of some of the submitters. If anybody else has anything, please let us know.
Yep, is this any... like I said, I'm not going off the board today. Is anybody...
Yes, I
yes,
have my name
Paula.
there. Thank you. Thank you. Look, hate to do this, and I've only just found out myself, but I've got a number of messages from submitters who are also querying the accuracy of comments attributed to them, one of which is Katie King, who's concerned about her comments around the community hub in Rotatuna, and Tim Babbage around his comments around a recreation centre in Hamilton. He feels that they've been misrepresented in the minutes. Now, there's not much we can do about it, but I would like those people to be followed up and have their minutes corrected if that's at all possible.
There's plenty we can do about it.
And so,
Councillor Southgate, they just need to make contact with us, as those other people have done, and point out where they feel and how they feel their comments have been misrepresented, and between the strategy team, our review of the live stream. You'll appreciate that at the minutes, in excess of 60 pages, it's not... Yeah. With the best intent, we accept that we will have made errors, and we're happy to correct those where that's happened.
Oh, it's a big job, I get that. And so up to what point can people reading, maybe catching up with the agenda, see the minutes, and up to what point can they ask for minor corrections?
With the agreement of you all and with the CE, my suggestion would be that, say within the next few days, if people contact us, if you give us a blanket confirmation of the minutes, if you like, subject to any corrections of matters of fact and accuracy, because of course we do have the live stream to refer to.
Yes.
Then I'm satisfied that that would be an appropriate way to go forward.
So you would need a mover for an amendment to the recommendation because it says that they're true and correct, and it's possible that
subject. So in this case, subject to the amendment of minor matters of fact and accuracy.
So can we put that up as the?
Well, we don't need it on the board. I think we understand.
No, we do, because I won't be voting for the minutes as a true and correct record otherwise.
Just for the sake of time, could I have the Democracy Manager read to us what the motion will be?
Yes, give me 1 second, Chair. To tidy it up. Absolutely, Councillor Mallett, thank you for that. So my suggestion would be that the Council confirm the open minutes of the Council 10-year plan hearing meeting held on the 11th to the 17th of May 2018 as a true and correct record, subject to amendments for minor matters of fact and accuracy provided by submitters, by members of the public, to Council before the 5th of June.
Before the 5th of June?
Which is next Tuesday.
Okay, so moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Paula. Would you like to second that?
Yes, look, in good faith, given that I think there's a lot of information here, I will.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Paula. All those for? Any against? Carried. Okay, item 8 on page 178. So I'll now invite Sean Hickey to the table with whichever members of your team you feel are appropriate. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just before we got into the reports proper, I just wanted to give a very quick overview of the process and just introduce sort of a couple of people so that elected members knew who to seek support from during the course of the meeting. So I just want to confirm, so the purpose of today's meeting and for the next couple of days is to make any changes to the draft 10-year plan budget, development contributions policy and ratings policies. We already have drafts of those things which Council has approved, so the next couple of days is about changes to those. So that's the starting point. You will have received this document, which we discussed in brief a couple of days ago. An updated version was sent to you last night, and those that want them have hard copies on their desks. It is. Yep. The title of the document.
Which one is it? Yep, deliberation meeting. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm not going to go through that, but that sets out the order in which we're planning to take the meeting today, and what we've tried to set out very clearly where the opportunities are for elected members to raise various matters, motions, etc. I just want to introduce Stephen Hallowell. I know that elected members all know Stephen, but also Hayden and Brett. So they'll be running the financial model. So I'm sitting over here. So they will run the financial model, which will update based on kind of decisions that you've made, or if you want to understand the financial implications of decisions before you make them, then these guys will be able to model that for you. Also, for elected members that want to draft motions, can I ask that we want to coordinate those so that we ensure that those motions are crafted in a way that are sound, but also that the financial implications are sound as well and are understood. So if you do have draft motions, we're going to coordinate those through Chelsea, so Chelsea Stewart. So if you can include her in any emails that you've got with potential motions on any matters. We have got a number of motions which people have already sent to various of us, and we're just coordinating all those through that central point. Governance team and myself will help craft those up to make sure that they're written in a way that gives effect to what you want to achieve. The other document I just want to make sure you're aware of, there was a document titled Updates to the 31 May 2018 Council Meeting Agenda. That's this sort of one page, which you also have either have hard copies on your desk. Were also emailed last night and is also on OneDrive, and that just sets out a number of corrections in the document which we became aware of after the agenda was published. And I think I'll leave it there. I think Stephen is just going to talk a little bit about the financial model and what you can expect to see in that.
Good morning, elected members. Brett, the magic of throwing the model up on the screen, I'll test that for the first time. And assist all systems a go. So we're going to focus ourselves on these two graphs during the course of the meeting. And that's the debt to revenue graph and the balancing the books graph. This one is so versions of these are in the agenda in attachment 3E, and so we'll just run through our starting point. The red columns represent the updated base budget from the decisions made in March, plus the items identified in the operating expense and capital expense part of the budget as adjustments, which you'll get to discuss a little later. And then as we move through the course of the day, the red columns won't move, they'll stay fixed, and the blue columns will be any decisions we make during the course of the meeting, or anything we want to look at during the course of the meeting. And so the red columns will move. The black line on the debt to revenue thing, thank you, Brett. Brett's going to move his mouse around, hopefully, as I speak, and we can see what I'm talking about. That represents a 230% limit. That is our financial strategy limit for our debt to revenue ratio. The 230% limit, which is the limit, the black line, sorry, the bolder black line, yeah. Okay. And so this model is based on the CD preferred option of a 2 year, 2 years to balance the books, and that was and so that after the adjustments that have been made has reduced from 9.5, and then 3.8s to 9.1, 9.1, and 3.8s. And so everything balances and is nice and even on this graph. For the purpose of the meeting, so that we're not debating and discussing how the rates options work, it's proposed that we focus the meeting on a 1 year increase, and Brett's going to just quickly change that to 15.7 as a 1 year increase, and this is as we did back in December. And any decision about the rating system and how we allocate the rates over years, that can be made at the end of the meeting where it is in the agenda, and we just see the impact of the decisions. So changing that to 15.7, that's the equivalent of the 9.9 plus 9.9, 9.1, sorry, not 9.9, yeah, 9.1 plus 9.1. Balance of books in the first year, and the slightly quicker debt repayment sees a gap appear in the debt to revenue ratio. So we're going to look at that version, and the other version we're going to look at and compare is what if we hit the 230% limit rather. So instead of focusing on balancing the books in year one, we focus on the maximum debt and how that affects us. And so you can see there in year 6, the blue line is just touching the black line, and we, instead of balancing the books in year 1, we balance the books after year 3. So we balance the books in year 4 with a couple of about $2 million deficit, $2-3 million deficits in years 1 and 3 there. And I think that's, oh sorry, the rates increase to achieve that is 12.7. 12.7. Yeah. So we'll be looking at those two options during the course of the meeting. What is the rates increase if we balance the books in year 1, and what is the rates increase if we hit the 230% limit as we make our decisions along the way?
So with that, Mayor Andrew, we're happy to sort of move on to the development contributions paper, which Greg is going to talk to.
Andrew, can I just ask a question on that? Stephen, your analysis and coming back to the 12.7 is based on no change to the spending that was previously agreed upon in December, and the levels of expenditure for transport and community assets that are presently sitting in that agreed budget from the December deliberations.
So I'd rephrase that as the March decision. So in 27th of March, when we adopted the CD, we adopted the budget and the financial statements with that. So there were some minor changes, audit adjustments and things like that between December and March. And so the report that David's going to speak to on the operating expense a little later, that's all about the movement from March.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Welcome, Greg. Welcome, Lachlan.
Morning.
Greg, shall I move forward with the meeting, or do you have anything to introduce?
I've just got a short introduction.
Yep.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Lachlan and I will be presenting the proposed DC policy deliberations report, which is in page 178 of your agenda. We are seeking resolutions this morning on amendments to the publicly notified proposed DC policy, which will then come back to you incorporating resolutions made at this meeting today for final deliberations, debate and adoption on the 28th of June. An adopted reviewed DC policy would be effective 1 July this year. In short, speaking generally, the strongest and most common theme across the submissions that we received and at the hearings is that the proposed charges are too high and that they would materially impact development feasibility. Acknowledging that the majority of the submissions were from parties associated with development or the development community, but that was the strongest theme, and obviously we've got a pretty comprehensive set of submission themes, etc., which we're going to investigate this morning.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning, Your Worship. Councillors, I just had a comment I wanted to make around process, and it was and it addresses the scope of your deliberations today. there's a deliberations report which Greg will be presenting, and it's part of the agenda, which, as Greg has identified, picks up on key themes that came through in the submission process. But you're not constrained by that report. So if there are any other matters that are of interest or concern to you that arose out of the full body of the submissions received or the hearings that you held into submissions, those are all matters that are on the table for discussion and debate and deliberation today. So Greg has attempted to effectively pick up the key themes and deal with them, but I just want to stress that you're not constrained by the scope of the deliberations report. Anything goes in terms of any ideas or discussions that you want to have today. Thank you.
So Sean's already given us a summary, but just in terms of procedure, my understanding this morning for this item is that Council will one by one address and resolve in relation to each of the recommendations. 7 of them are proposed or staff recommendations to amend what was in the proposed policy, and then there are 20 in total. So, you know, we're expecting any debate or resolution on any of those items, but 7 of them you'll see in the recommendations section, and then, of course, anything else that comes up. Also, I've got 2 members of the DC staff who will be helping us this morning. So Nathan Delghetti will be sitting there running our model, that he can do some high-level sort of live modelling if that's wanted, and Stafford Hodgson, who will be supporting, and they're both behind me at the moment. And so we'll take the report as read from here, and I leave it in the chair's hands to go forward with the deliberations.
Okay, so can I just guide members to the document that was sent out last night in final form from Sean Hickey, which you should all have a copy of. The heading, it's modelling deliberations meeting. So we have had 2 of them before, and they were just, and they both had draft written across them. There's just slight changes made overnight or yesterday. So this is the final copy that I'll be working through to work through the meeting. So the first item on here is the staff recommendation on CBD remissions. So we're on this document here, which will guide you back to the main document on page 3. So it guides you to page 185. And I have so this first one is on DC remissions in the CBD, and I have a motion from Councillor Mark on this, which is about to go up on the board.
Sorry, Your Worship. Say page 185, but the staff recommendation relating is on page 178 in what I've got. Is that?
I've got it in my document on 185 in this, but it's guiding you from this document here to 185. So the documents that we just referred to from Sean Hickey, which is headed deliberations meeting.
Yeah, well, okay, it's a bit confusing because at the start of the report on page 178, it's got the staff recommendations one by one, then it's got the details of them on page 185. So the wording of the actual motion is on page 178. It's the explanation of the resolutions on 185. So we need to know what we're actually amending or changing.
So Councillor Davis correct, the actual recommendation in the agenda is on page 178, and that's the recommendation from staff. That's been broken down section by section, and effectively this document that Sean's handed out is effectively an index for the content, rather than to make the conversation easier to have, to be able to link the resolution to the conflict. But you're right, content, you're right, 178 is where the resolution sits, or recommendation sits, sorry, Councillor.
So Mark, can I hand over to you to talk to your motion?
Right, we'll give it a crack. I'm essentially moving that
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, I've just asked Mark to explain it while it's getting up on the board.
All right, the essential alteration that I'm interested in is the CBD remission. And I'm presuming I'm speaking about the right thing at the moment. I, after due consideration and having listened to submissions and listened to people who put me in this position, have thought that I want to do everything I possibly can to encourage CBD development. I feel that the removal, the immediate removal as scheduled of the CBD remissions is potentially a little bit sudden. I also see an opportunity arising in that it's been discussed anecdotally that there's been quite a rush of applications to develop in the CBD since the discussion about this, and I feel we can extend that rush if you like. It's if you like it being crude, it's like changing it from a Briscoe's one-day sale to a Briscoe's this sale must end next week. So therefore it's signalling the intention to remove the CBD remissions, but I feel in the current form it's a little bit harsh. So I'm suggesting, fortunately, that we bring it in over 3 years, essentially. So we phase out the CBD remission with 66% automatic CBD remission to apply until 19, 33% in 2020, and no automatic remission from 2021. So if you like, it's phasing it out over 3 years instead of 1.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Dave. Okay, so we'll go to the board for questions. Councillor Gary.
Thanks. I had my name up for some other questions, but that's right. I'm on to this one. Okay, presumably the shortfall, and I guess I'm talking to Greg and Lachlan now, the shortfall will be to the account of the ratepayer?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any idea of the quantum of what?
Yeah, I've calculated 800,000 year 1, 400,000 year 2, so total.
That's Mark's.
Yeah.
That's the 6663. Okay.
Yep. So 1.2 million across 2 years, first 2 years.
Thank you, Greg.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks. Just regarding indexing, particularly page 192, Greg, I know you've spoken to this a bit. Just for my understanding, without indexing, you're saying the PPI, which the LGA allows you to do, is sort of like a de facto indexing in a way, even though it's not proper, you use that to structure your pricing, is that right?
So, what is your point of order?
I
just want to hear what the point of order is.
Okay, I thought we were addressing this motion here. I think Ryan's talking about the other items in the report.
So that's not a point of order. So go ahead, Ryan.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so with your proposal to not index, you mentioned that the LGA allows...
Hang on. Councillor Ryan, we're coming to the indexing question at a later date. Okay?
Okay, so this is purely for the amendment?
This is purely for the CBD remission only.
Sorry, I had my question up first, I didn't realise. I will ask a question on that then.
Yeah, my apologies,
sure.
I made that clear, and I was only talking about number 1.
Just with your emission, Mark, was that 2 years or 3 years did you have there?
It's over 3.
Okay, yeah, but I'll just, no, that's fine, no questions.
Councillor Rob.
Thanks, Chair. My question is about CBD remission. I noticed it started in 2013. Do you think it's had a long enough life, given the time period that it takes, obviously, of bringing the remission in and the developers starting and completing their action?
Yeah, that's right. So if you secure a consent which locks in your rate, then you have a number of years. Would be a typical period of time before you come to a CODA compliance situation, which is typically when you would pay those DCs. So that's right. It provides that economic incentive in the future. Yep. And so what you're saying, I agree with that. There's a lag period. Is it long enough? Just personally, I guess if we look at the regeneration of the CBD as which probably is a 10-year, 15-year, I don't know, it's a long process. So I guess if council wanted to use this tool, then you could argue that you would want to have it in place for a significant period of time, but of course there's lots of reasons why you may in fact not want to do it. So, yeah.
So do you think we're being unfair on the developers by cutting it right off?
Cutting it. So the recommendation in the paper is to have a 2-year, you know, like 50% in the first year. So, and the amendment obviously is to do that over 3 years. Again, I mean, my decision, I mean, the staff recommendation was based on the submissions, you know, the evidence that we could have around whether or not it is an incentive, which the conclusion is that yes it is, but it's hard to tell to what extent. And then elected members in the briefing expressed that you know, this is one of the things that it was important to them around, you know, revitalising the CBD. So in effect that was you know, what led to what's only a staff recommendation, but that's the reason for it, yeah.
Okay, just one final question. The calculation of the revenue loss by perhaps Councillor Mark's amendment, you've just apportioned it, have you? You've got 0.6 million and you've adjusted it up to the 66% and brought it back down to the 33% in terms of the revenue loss.
Yeah, so our forecast, in the 6th of December report, we did some work and forecast 1.2 million a year for 10 years. So that calculation I just mentioned was simply 2/3 of 1.2 million plus 1/3 of,
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The CBD submission has been as successful as hoped in terms of that central city revitalisation, or has it fallen short of the mark? Not sure that's the right question to whom, but...
to be fair to staff, I don't think we could know the answer to that because we don't know.
But I think you were saying that it has led to an upturn in building in the CBD, but to what extent it's successful, you can't be certain.
I think the tricky thing is to try and say definitively whether or not it pushed people over the line of feasibility, or where they had a substantial project and they said, look at this, there's a CBD remission, that's the final straw for us. I think that's the difficult thing. But if you just start with the facts in terms of there have been some like really substantial developments, apartment buildings, there's a proposed hotel and other developments, and they've gone ahead in the last few years when we haven't seen that prior to that. But there's an improvement in the economics. So I guess, you know, you can it's not a causation thing, it's more of a how many links can we tie. My opinion personally is that yes, it does make a difference and people like it.
So, yes, because I'm wondering, my next question is to what extent would the earlier removal impact ongoing CBD revitalisation? I mean, there'll be a period of diminishing returns, but when is that, in your view? It's a difficult question, I know.
Yeah, it is a tricky question, and I mean, I guess that's partly, you know, to be inside the developer's head, and you know, as to whether or not they would do something. So I feel like I'd just be speculating. I'm not too sure.
There's essentially an argument, Councillor Paula, that it achieved a marketing outcome, in that from a Hamilton's perspective looking in, it was seen as a favourable place to develop. So whether or not it solved the final question of whether the feasibility of a development would go ahead or not, it provided a marketing aspect to the development community, including those from outside the city looking to come into the city as an option. But the challenge that we've had from talking with economists is the remission enough to trip over whether or not they would have done it or not, because whether they've done the development or not. And it has been argued by some quarters that the DC remission or a DC charge was a consideration, but not the absolute consideration of whether or not development would go ahead or not. So,
okay, so that brings my final question: is could this slower phasing in be a good signal for developers out there who maybe just teetering on the edge to get on with it? In your view?
I think it's likely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to debates. Councillor Mark.
Thank you. And look, I will keep it quick, largely because I have to. But to me, this is a balance. Our ratepayers and development community are being asked to look at some pretty sudden adjustments. And it also ties in with my desire to see the CBD built up a bit more. It's a judgment call, absolutely, and I appreciate the report from staff and the team regards the figures. I am a little bit more optimistic about the effect of a 3-year phase out rather than just a straight black and white numbers one. I think as Councillor Paula's questions teased out, I think this may alter the behaviour of the developments in the CBD. So we are sending a signal that, look, we do need a change. We respect you, but we really want you to develop in the central city. So you don't have a sale to lose money. You have a sale to bring more customers into your door. And this is what I think we're doing in this case. Thank you.
Councillor Dove.
Oh, sorry, I thought Gary was next. Okay. Look, I agree with what Councillor Mark has said. I think, however, I think those figures of 800,000 and 400,000 reduced income in the first 2 years are overstating the mark because of the point that Councillor Mark made. The fact that there are still lower DCs for development in that area will in itself cause more business, which is a different way of saying the same point Mark made. The other thing is when you make a change, and in this case I think it's a change for good reason, if you dump it on people straight away, you run the risk of losing buy-in and community support. I think that the business community, the development community that might be developing in CBD and Hamilton are able to adjust and understand the reasons for adjusting, but the question is the speed of adjustment. I think it's fair to give people a slightly longer time, to give that community a slightly longer time to get used to it, to plan for it. And that's the reason why 3 years I think is a bit better than the staff recommendation. And that's sort of a fair, that's a triennium, that's the length of the time of a council. There's lots of reasons why 3 years is a fairly good time period to phase a change in over.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I speak against the motion. And Mark was quite right, and I think Greg, everyone accepts that there has been a very gratifying increase in development in the CBD during the term of the DC remissions, but there's been a big spike across the whole city in the same period of time, and those guys have been paying their DCs. So to what extent there's no doubt that the remission would have helped somewhat, but it hasn't been a suppressant on the development across the rest of the city. And this is the thing that really gets it across the line for me. Every dollar that's not collected from a DC in a development town falls onto the back of our ratepayers. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Yeah, I'll be supporting this pushing it out to 3 years because I don't think the job is quite done yet. And over the last few years, this council has put a lot of effort into playing its part in rejuvenating the CBD. It just plays a small part. The business community does the rest. You know, in fairly coordinated fashion, this council has tried to, on a number of fronts, make a difference there. Free parking is another one, and that's why I'm quite relieved the other day the baby wasn't thrown out with the bathwater on that one. But it has practical implications, but also, as the CE mentioned, there is a marketing side to it as well. There is a side of making people feel good and positive about the CBD and investing in the CBD. And I also believe it is a factor. I've had conversations with a few developers, and I know of a couple of buildings that sat idle for an awful long time, and then in the last couple of years they've been done. And so I think it has played a part. And for me, the speed of adjustment is an important issue. We heard all about the speed of adjustment with the submissions we had on the change to CV in 1 year. It does make a difference, and I believe in phasing things. So I think let's do it in 3 years and let's finish the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm going to speak in favour of this motion as well. In fact, I possibly would have liked it to go out to 5 years, but won't go there at this time. We rely on property owners and developers in the central business district to create that revitalisation. The plain honest truth is we can't do it by ourselves. There are some developers and property owners out there who are doing some fantastic things. We're seeing the wonderful evidence of that with some pretty stunning revitalisation and modernising of office space. and other bits and pieces, and we're seeing some new cafes come in alongside that. I'm really excited about the health board also arriving in number and those kinds of things. So I just think it's too soon. We do want to give them a little bit of a hint that they need to get on with it while this exists. If you've got a project on the, on the edge of getting done, get it done. Get it done, and let's all benefit from a revitalisation of our central city.
Councillor Angela.
I appreciate what Councillor Bunting is trying to do here, and it is a good compromise. There will be a time to stop this CBD remission, but the time is not yet here. The CBD remission, in my view, should stay as it is. It takes several years for development to occur in the CBD, and for over a decade, the people of this city and this council have been complaining about the fact that developers have turned away and turned their backs on the CBD. So we got together with them and we discussed what they would need to invest in our central city. Why would we stop something now or even slow something down when it's working? So we put that incentive in, and it takes several years for developers and buildings and things to get going. Why would we stop that now? We agreed to incentivise. I think we need to stay with that, so I'll be voting against the motion.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I share Councillor O'Leary's concern about the short life of this remission policy, and I think other speakers have also indicated that it does take a period of time to get the developments from woe to go. The CCTP, in my view, is a very slow process, and whilst we'd all like it to happen overnight, it doesn't. And what we need to do in a central city transformation plan is to provide certainty to those stakeholders who we're reliant on to help us develop the central city. I think the remission does help. The remission in the motion does help, as many of the housing units provided fit more closely into that affordable price range. Not necessarily all of them, but and also there's a better utilisation of land, and I think that part of the 50% infill housing that we achieve, and which is a really good sign, comes from this type of development rather than the extension of greenfields. So in this instance, I'm supporting the motion, but I would like to have seen the remission perhaps extended out a little further than just the 3 years. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Yes, I'm compliment Councillor Bunting. I think this is a reasonable way forward. It is a transition. I fully respect that a number of investors will have purchased a property in the CBD zone, factoring in the issue of DCs. I think this 3 years is probably a very reasonable transition point. And I also note that there are a lot of very positive developments on the fringes of the CBD area that, of course, don't get any DC, still have to pay DCs. So I do think, in the end, we want to get back to a so-called level playing field, respectfully. But I think this 3-year transition is a very sensible, very reasonable and sincere way to give those developers who are planning developments on the basis of a set of criteria at the moment. Having said that, this is not intended to encourage developers to suddenly land bank a particular property ad infinitum. What we're saying is we do encourage you reasonably over the next 3 years to commence your development if you wish to take some advantage of the current policy. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, what we've got here is so far, come 2019, the CBD developers will have had 6 years of remissions. And at the end of the 6 years, I'll probably want another few years to add to that. My concern is we seem to be pouring money into the CBD, but we've got growth right throughout the city. the other developers out there are all paying their way, and I don't believe that the developers in the CBD are paying their fair share. And I see that this may be seen as we're favouring developers within the CBD, and as a result of that, I will be voting against the motion.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Just with respects to Councillor Mallett's comment regarding the ratepayer will pick up the development contributions or lack thereof, is it true, and I agree with that, provided the developer actually goes ahead and does it. If there is no development, there's no fees paid. And the last 6 years, we've seen this dead duck start to turn a tide. And I do agree with Councillor Jeff that it's a little bit premature if we stop that now, because we're not there yet. Thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate what Councillor Bunting's motion is all about, and I think it is a good thought, but I do have to say I agree with Councillor O'Leary that the remission process needs to go on for a bit longer. We're just like Councillor Hamilton said, you know, the dead duck has just been revived, and we don't want to hit it over the head even just slightly to slow that down. So I'm just wondering whether we are looking too short term. I appreciate also that the developers outside the CBD have to pay development contributions, but what do we want for the city? What do we really want for the city? Do we want to just spray it and spray it and spray it, or do we really want to revitalize it? We're talking about it all the time, but do we do enough, and do we just look too short term and change everything around again to stop everything? So I will be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Okay, before we go to the vote, I can sense there's a confusion around the room about how today's going to work, so I just want to explain that. So Mark's put up a motion. Mark's motion, I just want you all to turn to page 185, paragraph 65. Okay, so at the moment, in the box there where it says recommended, that's the fallback position if Mark's motion fails. Okay, so just through the whole day, that's how it's going to work. So you just need to be aware of when you vote something down without having put an amendment up, that you end up with what we agreed to in the draft plan.
Can I question that? Because we did not agree to, we had an immediate removal of the remission in the draft plan. In this case, normally you'd be right, but in this case, staff have actually recommended something different from the draft plan.
Sorry, you are correct.
Yeah.
So that's a staff recommendation that I just referred to. Chief Executive, where's the fallback?
The fallback position is the next point down.
Sorry, this point below it.
Retain proposed position of the CBD remission. No recommendations required for that.
Okay, so if this gets voted down today, that becomes the motion that's locked in. Okay, so what if you want a different outcome? You need to move an amendment or a foreshadowed amendment. Okay, so we'll continue with where we are. But is there anybody else who'd like to put an amendment up on this item? Yes.
So isn't Councillors Bunting then the amendment and the staff's recommendation was the motion?
No, it's no one's moved the staff recommendation, so his is the motion for today. So an amendment can go in behind that if somebody would like to put one up.
I'm happy to move an amendment that we accept the staff recommendation.
Okay.
But you've already spoken. We've all.
We have too.
Look, in this case, I'll put it up. Just because of the confusion around the table, but still to stay within standing orders. And the Deputy Mayor, you didn't speak, did you? James, could I please use you to second it, just to get it on the board to be fair to members? Okay. So what is that? It's the staff recommendation. 50%. So yes, so we're voting on the amendment first, which is a staff recommendation, and then the motion.
Can you just hold time 5 seconds?
Yes, sure. No, hang on, excuse me, no. Could you please speak to all of us? We're all equally involved in this. I know that they're confused, and that's what I've been explaining, but this is something that every member in the room needs to hear.
All I wanted to know is what their intention was.
So, I'll explain it again. Where we got to in the draft plan is if nobody had put up a motion or an amendment on this, we would have stayed with what was in the draft plan. Mark's put up something that
was complete remission immediately.
Well, hang on. Yeah. Just to guide you to it, on page 185,
yep.
in the box there. So you've got the staff recommendation at the top,
yep.
and then the next one down is where we got to, which is no CBD remission. All right?
So Andrew, sorry to interrupt you. So
yes.
Retain proposed policy position always means what went out to public consultation, the
yes.
10-year plan as it went out to public consultation.
Okay.
So those figures above there, so that 0.6 million is a rates increase of 0.6 million, is that right? With the staff recommendation, and when Mark's would be slightly more than that because it's, yeah, okay, thank you. But that's what I thought it was. So that's what it was then.
Okay.
Could I ask a question for clarity of the
sure.
two members?
Yes.
So my understanding, a question to Councillor Angela and Councillor Rob, is that you want to retain a CBD remission indefinitely. Okay, so then Mr Mayor and...
No? Well...
I was just looking for a fallback position, and I've shared that same concern that Mayor Andrew has, is that if Councillor Bunting's motion fails, then we've got nothing else but what was in the March decision. And I was looking for a fallback position where we would have at least some remission, which is the staff recommendation.
Okay, fine, I'm misunderstood. Sorry, Councillor.
Okay, so we're right of reply, Mark.
Yes, I understand what's going on here, and appreciate everybody's arguments regards it. We've got some members who want no remission at all for a long time. I think it's going well, and some who want more remission or more length of remission. What I'm trying to establish here is a balance, acknowledging the fact that things do need to change. Just in response to Councillor Henry, I would implore her to support it, because I firmly believe that this will actually do more for the CBD than actually keeping it there for indefinitely. I think nothing is a great incentive like the fact that an offer is going to end, and I think this is a reasonable time to give people a decent amount of time, or a decent time to say, hey, shake your tail feather and get into it. So yeah, and it is favouring developers in the CBD. Just in response to Councillor Leo, I make no bones about that. I firmly believe that the CBD needs more development, and I will do everything within my voting power to ensure that happens. Ironically, shortening down a free CBD remissions policy does achieve that, but if it's done in a timely manner, I think it will achieve a better effect than keeping it or getting rid of it straight away. So I think we all want to do the same thing, but how we're going to get there is where we disagree. So, yep. Come on, Siggy. Come on over. Come on.
Say, and this is, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not trying to, you all know my position. So if the amendment fails and the motion fails, we go back to the draft, the thing that went out to the public. Is that right?
That's correct.
That becomes our position.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Which in this
case... And that's the same with every decision we're making today. Yeah. That's how it works. So,
so
the starting position is the draft which went out to consultation, which has been slightly amended early in our agenda.
So just to make it really clear, for those of you who spoke for no remissions, Leo, Gary and a couple of others of you, you would vote down both the amendment and the motion, which would then carry through to the original motion from the last meeting, which is standing.
Because that has standing, because it has been approved by this council previously.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, Councillor.
Add slight confusion.
Yep.
There is the ability under standing orders, if the amendment fails, for someone else to move an amendment if they haven't spoken in the debate, which is a second try at trying to change it. So there is that element, and for something like this, that may be what someone wants. No, I'm just saying there's a potential other point in the process that people can use.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go to the board to vote.
I just have a process question.
Sure.
Or either to you as the chair or to the governance manager. So, will there be a catch-all motion at the end, or are we going to continue crafting this policy by individual resolutions, which the staff have laid out really clearly under each issue in the paper?
So we're locking in these as we go. So each time we vote, it's locked in.
So we're developing a policy via a whole range of individual motions.
That's correct. Okay, so hang on. I have called for the vote. I will take questions after the vote, but once I've called for the vote, there is no more questions and no more talking. So I will come back to your question after the vote. Are you comfortable with that? Or is it something that affects this vote?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so I'll come to it straight after the vote. So we're going to the board to vote. So the first thing we're voting for is the amendment. Then we're, yeah, so on the amendment.
The amendment is lost. 12 against, 1 for.
We're now voting on the motion.
The motion is carried, 9 for, 4 against.
Okay, so now we'll go to Rob's question.
Yeah, my question just follows on from Councillor O'Leary's, and that is, if we have locked in a motion, as we have presumably with this, does it then require a revocation at the end of deliberations, which requires the 75% majority to change? If we use this one as an example for it.
I'll pass it over to the Democracy Manager.
If at any point in the course of this meeting an elected member wants to revisit with a view to revoking a decision already made, the threshold is 75% for the revocation to be successful.
Can we vary that, Mayor Andrew, in terms of this meeting? Because I did raise this in my notes to Democracy earlier on, and just felt that certainly during the deliberations in December, I think there was a fair element of confusion that, having once put the whole of the budget together, the opportunity to revisit just to me seems a little bit unfair, that it requires a 75% majority to change something which, in the order of things, you know, there's all of these balls in the air that we may want to go back and collectively revisit.
No, I intend to stay with standing orders.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr Mayor, can we just have a 10-minute break? Because I do want to hear all of this development thing, and on a 10 minutes, or 5 minutes even, so I can hear everything and vote accordingly. I just need to go to the toilet. Just putting it out there.
Just look.
Well, I can, but this is important debate.
No, look,
and we have been sat since 9:30, and I think a 5 or 10 minute break would be neither here nor there.
Look, I intend to run. I will stop for you this time, but I just need members to be able to shoot out and go to the toilet. I tend to run 2-hour sessions, okay, which I'm going forward. We will stop
that.
now till 11:05. But going forward, we will be running on 2-hour sessions. But there will be breaks that will naturally come when we have to stop for democracy. Okay, so 11:05. Okay, so our next break, just to be clear, will be 1:20. So just, it's acceptable for members to shoot in and out of the room for a toilet break if they need to during the meeting at a time that they feel is appropriate, or to get a cup of tea or whatever. So just no, yes, sorry, hook, line and sinker.
You should have said yes.
So on this next item, which is new capped charges, I just want to hand over to Richard, to the Chief Executive first, who just wants to talk you through a error in the documentation. So if you can go to page 189, or Greg.
Yeah, so I'll ask Greg to do this. He's the man at the helm.
So page 189, paragraph 95.
So that's a table. The last two lines of the table, first which reads retain policy caps, and the second one says remove all caps. The estimated financial impact should be swapped there. So the 0.1 million should be on the bottom line and nil on the second to bottom line. And the reason for that is obviously that the proposed policy, if you retain what's in the proposed policy, then there's no impact to the proposed policy financials. So that's a mistake.
Okay, so on this item, I'll move remove all caps.
Andrew, so are we on
So
page 178, paragraph 3, Romans 2, are we?
So probably the best way to do it is a document that was sent out last night by Councillor Sean. General Manager Sean. Go page 3, and that guides you to the pages and the paragraphs that we're dealing with. So if you look in the right-hand column, it says pages 186 to 189, and then in the middle column it says paragraph 77 to 95. So could you get that, please? Thanks. So it's moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor.
And I also note that I will be seconding all the Mayor's motions as appropriate in order to get the motion on the floor. My own individual vote will be reflected in the voting that subsequently happens.
Thank you for that helpful information.
Okay, we can take the seconder from somebody else if you like. Sorry, I'm teasing.
In my
okay,
capacity.
let's move forward. Okay. So we're moving straight through to debate because there's no questions.
Sorry, just this is again a situation where any revenue that is missed out on because of the cap would be picked up by other developers or the ratepayer?
The ratepayer.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Paula.
The removal of the cap as proposed in the motion would have what impact on Rotokauri some growth in the next short while, do you think?
Richard.
So basically, there could well be an impact on demand. However, the conversation with Rotokauri developers that may well come out of the decision to remove all caps may change the way we approach the delivery of Rotokauri to more of a collaborative approach. So this completely reflects the cost of doing business in Rotokauri by removing the caps, and it provides an opportunity for those developers to actually acknowledge the demand they're placing on that growth cell and then work together with council with the money that we have budgeted for to come up with a solution collectively. And it may well be, and it's a conversation had at previous briefings, it may well be a more efficient solution for the private sector to deliver the outcome, for example, a swale, than it would be for council.
And does it have any impact on SHAs in that respect?
It will have an impact on, no SHAs, because effectively there was no residential caps in the proposed budget. So this is just removing the last cap.
That's for the existing SHAs.
Yeah, that's right. So, but any resource consents that come in for a qualifying development will be subject to the policy that's in place at the time, and it's highly likely to be the signed-off policy because none of them will be in prior to 1 July.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're in debate. Quite simply, we've moved one of our fundamental foundations that we moved was that growth pays for growth. I fully accept the CBD was an exception, and I have no issues with where we're heading there. Going from nothing to full caps and easing them in over 3 years, I think is the right thing, and I think that will generate interest leading up to 1st of July 2019, and again leading up to the 1st of July 2020, where people are rushing to get their consents in. But in this area, which is for the rest of the city, I think that developers need to pay their own way, and we do know that in different areas the amount is set at different levels because of the different lay of the land and for different reasons, and should the residents of the city who are in for a large rates increase anyway, or very likely for a large increase, should they be subsidising developers moving forward? And I say the answer to that is no. Councillor Angela.
Thank you. I find myself in a peculiar process here, designing this important policy that builds our city by committee and with, as I believe, around 20-something individual motions that will go to crafting the final policy is rather strange, and for me doesn't have the eye on the outcome of what an important policy like this achieves. So because we don't have that, I'm going to debate the whole. The policy prior to this one from 2016, prior to leading into this LTP, for me was sensible and affordable. And quite a lot of work went into the review of that policy, and we took the people that develop our city and build our homes very much on board with us. This policy, the very people that we rely on to build the homes we so desperately need right now in our city, will be penalised, and some will be penalised heavily. It's unaffordable. Some of the submitters told us that they will leave the city, that they will find other towns and cities to build in, that they would build the homes that we so desperately need right now in more affordable places. The sweeping changes of this proposed policy are widespread and significant, and submitters on the DC policy told us that. We got a report from Inside Economics, and also through other submitters told us that future home owners could bear the brunt of these unaffordable costs that will be passed on to them. The unaffordable costs that developers will simply not be able to absorb. And some of those increases, depending on the outcome of the variety of motions that will build this policy, could be between 60 and 130% increases if the policy goes ahead. And all that will do will make it even harder and more unaffordable for developers to build the very homes that we so desperately need right now. I am very much opposed to this policy.
So, moving forward, I consider as a chair that wasn't the subject of what we're debating today. That should have come down at the end when we make the final wrap-up decision.
I asked that question whether we were having a wrap-up motion, and you yourself, Chair, said we wouldn't.
So can I guide you to the bottom of the page that you're working off from Sean's documents? Okay, so that would have been the appropriate time for a speech about the whole thing. I'm just letting. I've let that go.
But I asked.
Angela.
Sorry, Chair. I asked you very, very directly whether you would do a wrap-up motion, and your answer to me was no. It was very, very clear. So what are you telling me now? Has that changed? Where am I looking?
Councillor Angela, you've got the document in front of you that I've referred to all morning from Sean last night.
Yes.
And if you go to the bottom box.
Of which page?
Sorry, it hasn't got a page number on it. But
Three.
Page 3
Yeah.
of this document, Councillor O'Leary.
Well, there's no pages on it.
so if you go to the bottom box, but anyway, I don't want to debate this now. I'm just saying you need to stay on subject on what we're debating as we go, please.
So is there going to be a wrap-up motion then? Has that changed? Because you did, Mayor Andrew, I asked you that question for direction on when I would debate and the process, and you said there wouldn't be. I don't believe I'm the only elected member that heard you say that.
Sean, did you hand out this morning your final copy?
Yes, so the final copy is, and I think what you're referring to is on page 3, which has does have page numbers on the final copy. So the intention was that these decisions are made and are binding as we go through. You'll see the motion at the bottom of page 3 is to receive the report, and notes that proposed policy is scheduled to be adopted at the 28th of June council meeting. So that wrap up at the end of the DC policies isn't an opportunity to re-debate the decisions that have been made through the course of this DC policy paper.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. All right, Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I do not support this motion. Angela spoke about developers telling us. Well, reality is telling us that the cost of developing in Rotokauri, for all sorts of topographical reasons and stuff that are smarter people than me have identified, is as per the development contributions we've got there. This is just another situation where we have to make a choice. Do we stick to our principles of growth pays for growth? And it's beyond my knowledge or my expertise to challenge the staff's allocations of costs, but I trust that these people have got it right. And if they say it costs $63,000 to do a development at Rotokauri, that's it. You can challenge those things, but once that's been found to be accurate, someone has to pay for it. Today we are making the decision whether or not it's the ratepayer or the developer stroke resident who buys that property. And there are reasons why the costs are important, because that's actually the cost of building the swales out there. That's actually the cost of putting the roads in. So that is a signal to the developer that maybe, mate, I'm afraid, I'm sorry, but given the requirement for building infrastructure out at Rotokauri, your development, sorry, mate, is just not going to work at the moment. Now, I don't feel any pleasure if I was an owner of the property out there, and I wouldn't feel any pleasure telling the bloke that that's the situation. But if our staff have got it right with their, and you've got it right, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think we have to. We can't just dump all this stuff back on the ratepayers. Somewhere along the line, we've got to say no. You pay for your costs. Okay, so I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask for
Yeah.
Because I believed that you were speaking against putting caps on, which is the motion. But you've just said you won't support it, so I...
Oh, sorry, I won't support caps. What I meant to say.
So you do support... Yeah.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do find this debate a bit complex and difficult because all the parts are actually interwoven and impact on each other. I'm concerned land value is key, and I'll talk about this later in the wrap-up. Land value, in my view, is key to driving housing affordability, so I'm a little bit concerned. Look, Rotokauri would have been cheaper if we had pointed all roads to Rotokauri and built the swale, and at that point, you're absolutely right, they shouldn't have any other greater advantage. But we do want to, despite Peacock, in addition to Peacock, we do want to allow for as much land to come onto the market as possible, because that is going to have the best impact on house value, in my view.
Councillor Ryan.
So just a point of clarity, Chair. If your motion or the motion drops, what is the fallback on this one?
So the fallback, there at the moment, I'll hand it over to the Chief Executive.
This motion here, which is to remove non-residential caps, the fallback position, there's only one non-residential cap for Rotokauri in the base budget, or for any catchment in the base budget, and that's the for Rotokauri non-residential. So that's the fallback position. We'll just have that small cap. By doing this, we're removing that one last cap from the budget.
You say non-residential cap?
Yep, non-residential.
So there's no cap on residential?
Not in the base budget.
So I'll just clarify, Richard's right, but in the proposed policy in Rotokauri there are no caps on residential, and then there is a cap on non-residential which says that no development will pay more than $60,000 per 100 square metres. So as far as I understand it, that motion says remove that $60,000 cap, and then non-residential there isn't one, so all you need to do is to do that, and then you will have no caps in Rotokauri if that was to be passed.
It's commercial?
Or commercial, retail, industrial.
Why doesn't it just say remove all caps? Makes it clearer.
For clarity, it might just be clearer to say remove all caps in that recommendation.
Even though there's only one, it just makes it clear for everybody that...
Yep. So if the Mayor and the seconder, the Deputy Mayor, is comfortable with that, can we update the resolution to say remove all caps? Is that acceptable to those?
Yes, that's fine. Deputy Mayor.
I was just being detailed when I wrote that.
Councillor Dave.
Thank you. I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing with Councillor Mallett, though I stress that this is only a one-off. We either believe in growth paying for growth, or we don't. We can't say that on the one hand to the whole of the city, and then on the other hand take a little bit of it away, unless it achieves an advance in our strategy. Now, I don't think our strategy is so broke that the removal of non-residential caps in Rotokauri is going to cause developers to go off to Tauranga or Oamaru or somewhere like that. Even though Stephen may want them to go to Oamaru, they're not going to go down there. They're going to stay here because the need for growth is in this area. But they're going to find, like the Chief Executive has said, some other ways of paying for that. They are already, and not just in Rotokauri, coming to us with alternative ways of funding infrastructure and building it themselves, and therefore getting credit of part or even all of the development contributions. And that's good, actually, because sometimes, Gary is right, the private sector can do it better than the council. If they can find a way to do the job, no, not all the time, Gary, if they can find a way to do it better than the council, and do the right job, then why should we stop them? And this is actually an encouragement to do that. I can recall developers claiming in submissions that when we brought in the very first DCs of 20,000 per section, that it would cause developers to leave this town. But hey, they didn't leave this town. They're still here in droves. It didn't stop anything. It just made them look at things more holistically, different ways of skinning the same cat. So I think that this is a good thing to do. It's driving some alternative funding and infrastructure mechanisms up in Rotokauri already. And I think we should have a pure policy in that area. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried 10-4, 3 against.
Okay, so just before we move on, Angela, Councillor Angela, I apologise for the confusion earlier on the last paper. So, and if anyone else has any questions about process, just do bring it up at the time. Just basically say it's clarification that you're looking for, and there is room in standing orders for clarification questions. Thank you. So we're now moving on to recovery of CapEx outside of the 10-year plan period. So this is on pages 189 to 190. And I'll move the staff recommendation seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So open for questions.
Just with your leave, Mr. Mayor, on page 190 there's a table. That table includes the initial projects that we're going to be collected outside the 10-year period. You'll see there's been a strike through which indicates those items relevant to the recommendation, just for clarity.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I'm cautious of this. I've listened to this, the experts and listened to the submitters, and I think we are.
Gary, question please.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, only a question.
Beg your pardon. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll move to debate. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I think we're just at risk. Actually, can I have a toilet break, please? I'm concerned that the causal nexus is very, very faint in these situations. I think the developers do have some, and let's be quite honest, we were looking for ways to generate income. This was a way that would legitimately we could generate some income through our DCs. But I do think we are getting tenuous in our causal nexus. Who knows what's going to happen, what technology is going to be around in 10 years from now. I smile a bit when water demand comes off. That could be no one would know what that means. That could, most of us probably immediately think water meters, but it could be toilet taxes, it could be all sorts of things, it could be a massive education program. We don't know what technology is going to be around at 10 years from now, so I just think we run a risk of collecting development contributions for projects that will have changed significantly by the time we get there. So I am very cautious and am borderline going to vote against it.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to vote for this because, and if I'm wrong, I would like to be corrected. My understanding is that this put us at a significant legal risk because of that causal nexus argument and other things if we tried to recover development contributions for things that could not legitimately be met within the 10-year period. I thought that was the legal advice that we were given by Lachlan, that this was a risk, and that's why I'm happy to support the motion that we don't do anything in this policy that increases our risk of legal challenge. Am I wrong in that? No, I'm not. Okay, I'm right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dave.
I'm in trouble, right? Thinking I'm agreeing with Councillor Mallett for the second time in as many minutes.
You're finally listening.
Because I have a concern about actually one of these projects being removed, the Cross City Connector. I believe that it's lay down misere, as they say, a certainty that that is going to be needed, and in fact at some stage will be needed to be brought forward into the later years of this LTP, simply because we're about to look at a major housing project at the eastern end of the Cross City Connector, the TGH proposal that people are aware of. There's also a large amount of housing out around Fairview Downs, and in fact, I've just had it raised with me by members of the public in the last 2 days that they don't see how people from those areas are going to be able to access the city efficiently without completion of the Cross City Connector, and I happen to agree with them actually on this occasion. I'm not so certain about the water demand management, but I think the argument that you should only charge for things that are within the 10-year plan period in this case doesn't make logical sense. We should look at all of those things, but I think there's a really practical reason why this is probably not a good idea to remove at least that one.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is lost, 6 for, 7 against.
Okay, so that does have an effect on our plan, so we just need that updated as you go, please. So we're moving now.
I would have thought that the plan that we've got in front of us, apart from the rates thing changing from 2 to 1 years, that was identified at the start, would have been what was in the draft LTP and the DC's proposal.
So Councillor McPherson's correct. So by that one being voting down, it reverts back to what's in the draft plan. So there's no financial impact of that last vote against. So okay. That is what's in the base budget. So, for example, page 190, all of those items in that table, every item in there, regardless whether it's struck through or not, will be part of our collection framework.
Including the 2 that struck out.
Yeah, because the 2 that struck out were failed.
So what? Sorry, just between the 2 that were struck out will now be collected for.
Yes, that's
yes, yeah, because that's what's in the draft 10-year
right.
plan. Yes, thank you.
Question, Richard, there isn't a greater financial impost. There's just a greater potential legal risk. That is where we've landed.
Yeah, no, there was very good reasons for including these in the first place. Following the briefing we had with councillors, we discussed the ones that we believed were robust through to ones that were slightly less robust, but only slightly less robust, and we've identified these ones here, but we're more than comfortable as staff that there is a very robust reason for collecting DCs on them.
Okay, so we move to the next item, indexing of charges. I will move the staff recommendation, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So we'll go straight to debate. We'll go straight to the board to vote. So we're voting. I've asked for the vote, so no more talking, please. Could we perhaps have the answer to your question? Excuse me. I've asked for the vote. Once I've asked for the vote.
Have it up on the board. Process, we should have it up on the board.
Look, can we pull out of the vote, because there's obviously, can we just reset, please? And I will, maybe I moved a little bit quick on this item. It just seems to be some confusion, or you all would have voted by now, you've had a minute. So let's go back again to questions. So we're on the item indexing of charges. So I think we'll start on this one, just to refresh us on, Chief Executive, you can hand it over to whoever you feels appropriate, just to refresh us on exactly what this is.
Okay, so Greg, I think you can do this, but I think the best place to refer to is probably paragraph 112 and the indexing of DC charge illustration, and explain what indexing does, and also can you please explain what is included in the base budget? Thank you.
So we have had a full briefing on this, so just touch on it to refresh us of where we are and guide us to the right pages.
So in short, indexing is an adjustment to charges in the model that is introduced in order to recognise the fact that money today is less value to the same nominal money in the future. Did I say less than? More than. Sorry, more than. And that is the purpose of indexing. That's the principal reason for it. And then there's a second step. The Local Government Act provides that territorial authorities can increase their charges each year by the producer price index for construction on the capital component only, and it says in the legislation without formality. So effectively, you can just get to the end of the year and you can increase your charges on that basis. What this does is it gives effect to the indexing. So in your model, it says that next year's charge will be higher, but unless you actually increase it, you won't notice that, obviously, because the charge is set at the 2019 rate, and that is indexed. Don't index, the model simply sets a charge to clear the model, and that charge is flat throughout the model. And so what we're debating, or what's being discussed here or debated, is whether or not you make that adjustment.
Okay, and so the motion on the board is a staff recommendation not to go with it. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about it yet. I'm going back to questions. But
Yeah,
just to be clear, I've put up the staff recommendation.
So the base budget that went out for consultation included indexing. This recommendation is to remove indexing. So effectively, our DCs will be the thick blue line on page 191, paragraph 112, rather than an increasing amount, which reflects some of the feedback we received from submissions.
Okay, Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. Just, for clarification.
Ryan, we're on questions.
I had questions regarding why we were removing indexing when the developers,
Ryan, sorry, Councillor Ryan, a question that you need an answer to the general
maybe
manager.
I'll share it in debate then.
Yeah, that's the right time to share it, yeah. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. So on paragraph 123, it says removing indexation, which is what Mayor Andrews' motion is. Is that right? Removing indexation?
Yes.
Yeah. It is $25 million positive to the city count to us.
Correct.
And that is because we're going to get more money early.
That's right.
And less money later on.
Yes.
However, over time, you update the model with the inflation-adjusted cost of assets anyway, don't you? Is that right? Is that what you just said before?
You do. They're sort of separate things. So in the first instance, if you just look at the model as it's crystallised and, it has the indexing or not, and then separately council in the real world, changes and updates and increases or reduces its capital program, and then you rerun the model. Yep. So the indexing lives through that, but because there's so many things going on there, they're sort of two competing things.
So we are collecting money, we are gaining the benefit of collecting money early.
Correct.
As opposed to the developer. So a developer who starts a 2018 will pay $100. A developer who starts a project 2033 will pay $100. But the guy who gave it in 2018 gave us that money way, way earlier. Hence, that's our benefit. We have the interest benefit of that, so to speak.
That's right, the interest benefit.
So that's where the $25 million comes from.
That's right.
And the developers wanted what we're saying, which seems strange, but maybe you're commenting on that.
They felt, they were strongly against it and felt that indexing was unlawful.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew.
Councillor Dave.
Gary asked my question, thanks.
Councillor Rob.
He pretty much has asked mine, but I just wanted to reflect back on paragraph 112. Doesn't that graph, if it's in model in line, doesn't that suggest that the dotted line we will over the term of the development gain more than just moving the plus 25 in the first 10 years and minus 25 in the second?
So the total cost of capital recovered under an index model is slightly higher than an index model because you're accumulating more interest early because you're having a lower charge. And this was one of the issues that was raised through the submissions, was that questioning whether you could do that at all, whether that slightly higher cost of capital could be reduced, and so that was a consideration. And you're right, what it is right.
So there's a chance that by accepting this motion up here, we might, over the term of the contract, receive slightly less. than
No.
or less than what we would have got if we'd indexed it right through the life of the development.
So if you look at the model and you know, you assume that it is reality, you will recover your total cost of capital over the long term. If you've indexed it, that nominal amount, the total cost of capital under an index model, is slightly higher. So you're going to recover the total cost of capital regardless, but you will need to recover a bit more if you've indexed it. And this is all pretty theoretical, you know, over the long run, because like Councillor Mallett said, you'll be updating with CapEx and all the rest of it, so it partly gets washed away.
Right, I think
also
I understand.
sorry, Councillor Pesco, you're also doing this over a longer period, so it's not the 10-year window as well, so the indexing period extends beyond the 10-year period as well, which that gap isn't even reflected in our 10-year period as well, so that's why the numbers reflect the way they do as well. That's
Thank you.
Can I just make a clarification to Councillor Pesco's comment? I think voting for the motion that's on the board is to remove indexation, not to retain it. Just want to make that clear. Yep.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Just so I'm absolutely crystal clear, in the draft annual plan that we put out last year, indexing was in there, and now we're recommending that we take it out.
So in the current or existing policy, it's not indexed. We propose to introduce indexation, and now the motion is to not do that and to continue without indexation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
Debate.
Is there any debate? Sorry. No. Yes, Councillor Ryan. Sorry, Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. Just an opportunity to respectfully answer Councillor Southgate and Rob regarding my questions for indexing. I just had some queries around the fact that we proposed indexing and then they kicked back when the perception was this is actually going to be better for the developers, and why are they resisting it? And I guess the answer or from Greg was that they felt longer term that they would be more penalised because they weren't ready to go now, and some thinking around that. And because of the fact that the LGA allows us to make those PPI adjustments, we're sort of de facto indexing anyway, and the fact that we can review it every 3 years. So I'm comfort with the staff recommendation to maintain the status quo and not index. So that was it. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried, 11-4, 2 against.
Okay, we'll now move to remissions 10 Huey household. Can I please get you, Greg, to explain the staff recommendation? Or Lachlan?
The staff recommendation for issue 7 in relation to bedrooms, we have had some significant engagement on this with elected members, so I won't go into great detail. But the short story is that under the existing policy, it deals with residential houses by either a house is a house, or if you're in a certain location, you will get a discount. But the bedroom policy tries to deal with the fact that that doesn't representation of demand. So there's strong correlation between census information that shows between the number of people in a household, the demand used, and the number of bedrooms in a household. So what?
We're on 10 Huey remission, adjusting the 10 Huey remission down to 5.
Right. So that was pretty much not relevant then. Can I bank that for the later?
Okay.
10 Hueys.
I'll just let you regather and start when you're ready.
Lachlan, this is yours, so.
Look, this is a proposed adjustment from the current policy position. You have introduced a remissions policy in your policies to date, and this is a continuation of your emission policy, but it is effectively a softening of the policy. At the moment, there is a threshold which requires that there be a material difference between modelled demand and actual demand of not less than 10 Hueys, and the overwhelming feedback from the stakeholders was that the threshold was just simply too tough, and it meant that legitimate opportunities for remissions that sat below 10 Hueys were not being considered by council. And so in response to that stakeholder feedback, the staff have recommended adjusting the threshold down from 10 Hueys to 5 as a way of responding to the reasonable requests of stakeholders. And I think staff have done some modelling in terms of impacts and consider that even with those impacts in mind, it still makes sense for council to do it. So that's the position.
Okay, so can I just come back in one paragraph in non-legal terms of exactly what this means?
Making the remissions policy more favourable to developers.
How?
By lowering the threshold at which point they get to have a conversation with council about a remission. Okay?
The amount of units that they build.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, it does not change how we assess remissions in terms of looking at metrics, actual demand, etc. It's simply the gate to get in the door. Yep. So instead of having to have 10 houses worth of demand, now the proposal is to have 5 only.
Right. Okay, I think that's very clear. Councillor Gary.
Is this kind of like widening the margin of error? So we are expanding.
Right, hang on, I think maybe just explain it a little bit further about actually how
I'm
many.
pretty sure I know what you got. Yeah, but yeah, sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, I still don't think it's clicked through from Councillor Gary's question. Just put it in developer terms. You've got a developer who builds 10 houses or now and could then come back and negotiate if they had less bedrooms. Just keep it real simple.
Okay,
I know you know it all, but sometimes we just need to be refreshed.
I don't know it all. I used to.
So say you have a 40 lot subdivision, 40 houses, and they had it was built efficiently and used less demand than the model assumed, then in order to be considered for emission, you'd have to show currently that you used 30 Hueys or 30 houses worth of demand or less. So you've got 40 houses, but you've got to show that you're using 30 or less.
Okay.
Is that a, what, sorry?
No, I get that now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to debate. Okay, we'll go to voting. Sorry, we didn't have a mover and a seconder, so can we reset on that, please? Thank you, Rebecca. So moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So we'll go to the vote now.
The motion is carried 11 for, 2 against.
Okay, now we move to cost allocation FE2 wastewater storage. So I'll move the staff recommendations, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Touch on that, please, for us. Greg.
Cost allocation FE2 wastewater storage, paragraph 200, or page 200, is it? Sorry, my apologies.
Para 1621, yes, we have 216 to 223. Page 200. Okay, so going back to remissions recovery costs, does anyone have a motion to put for that? Okay, so there is no motion, so therefore the recommendation that's already been voted through in the draft plan stands.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so we're now moving through to cost allocation FE2 wastewater. You can talk to the Chief Executive about it.
This is on page 197.
Yes.
The staff recommendation was to remove the cost recovery provision for emissions in the proposed policy.
Yep.
As compared with retaining the cost recovery. Am I reading that wrong? Or
okay, so we'll go back to that paper then on page 197.
197. Yep.
Okay, so
yeah, I'm happy to move the staff recommendation.
Well, hang on. You probably need to understand the effect of what you're doing, which is negative on budget. So,
nominal.
So, Greg, could you explain that, please?
Yeah, sure. So, in relation to cost recovery, there were some strong submissions from developers that we have a provision in there that allows us to recover costs for staff and other time for emission applications, which we've never used, but it exists. And the argument was that, look, DCs are really complicated. You know, they spend quite a bit of time and potentially money, you know, preparing remission applications, and staff and the process is reasonably difficult to navigate in terms of its technical. So they felt it was unfair that we would then bill them for our time whether or not they got a remission. So the staff recommendation is really revolved around, we understand that point of view. We've never charged for it anyway, and the DC team is sufficiently resourced where we deal with those remission applications. So the recommendation from staff is to take that out to...
So when you put in that table a nominal estimated cost, there's no increased cost, it's simply a cost that's previously been borne which would continue. Is that with staff time and so forth?
Yes, so that's basically, there would be an offsetting cost recovery from the way the base budget's currently premised is that we're seeking an offsetting cost recovery for those complex remissions. Yes.
But continuing on with and removing it as per the staff recommendation means that there's no additional cost popping up. It's just a cost that we've always borne.
So there's no cost popping up, but there'd be revenue reduction.
But we don't get revenue for it at the moment.
Base budget's premised on, so the base budget went out to consultation with a premise it would collect recoveries, that would charge for recoveries. Putting the recommendation through removes that recovery. The other aspect that we discussed at the briefing was by charging for the remission process application, it might give rise to at least some developers considering whether or not they actually got a legitimate remission to put forward and filter out those ones that are just giving it a test. So there might well be a cost impact, unfavourable, but again, I'd use the words nominal to describe.
So in that panel there, the estimated 10-year financial impact, there will be a financial there'll be a reduction in financial revenue, which we've currently got in the 10-year plan.
That's right.
So why haven't we got that figure in there?
Because it's been identified as nominal.
So what's nominal in terms of dollars?
We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars rather than millions of dollars, Greg.
Yeah, so nominal, non-material. The way I was looking at it was
tens of thousands?
We've never recovered a dollar for it. So what we're doing is foregoing the option of recovering some money. So I don't have a quantification. Zero is what we've recovered to date. So nominal meaning, you know, I'm not sure, but if we did go ahead and start doing that, then there would be some cost recovery, which Richard's referring to.
So how real is the testing that Richard's alluded to, you know, that developers will say, well, it's not going to cost me anything. I may go for a remission, in which case, you know, your desk sort of is this high with applications.
He's my boss, so I'm just going to say I agree with him.
Yeah, so we do have some developers that I deal with quite regularly who disagree with and test the decision quite often. So from my experience, there are a number of developers that will bring things in and test them legitimately in some cases. Some cases it's more of a just to see whether or not they can squeak out some additional savings. But this might provide some filter to remove those. How many it is, I'm talking dozens of people, not hundreds. You know.
Right, thank you.
So just for clarification, CEO, you mentioned that your base costs have gone up, which indicate that you you are kind of capturing some element of that?
So the base costs to date haven't gone up. I expect in the 10-year plan the base costs will go up as development contributions are going up. I'd suggest developers are going to look a little bit harder in terms of the development contributions they're paying. There will be greater pressure. We haven't factored in a significant resource increase in this budget because we just don't know what the impact of that will be, and we'll reassess that at the annual plan phase. The base budget is premised on some additional revenue to offset that, so there's some revenue and cost that's going on. But we don't necessarily know how much additional revenue this will bring in to cover those costs of those remissions. So we can't give you the clarity at this stage. It's a bit of a uncertainty depending on what's the impact of the development contributions policy, what is the developer's response in terms of seeking further remissions, and how much and what is the charging impact on assessing those.
So it's really like an administration causal nexus, is what you're saying?
Yes. What is the causal nexus? Yeah, it's a very robust response there.
Chair, just as a point of clarification, if this motion gets voted down, what is the fallback with the draft LTP position?
Charging for these administrative costs.
Okay.
Well, no motion's been put.
No, but the fallback. Oh, okay.
Sorry, you're asking for the fallback, yeah.
Sorry.
I forecast that I would move that.
Oh, okay, I thought,
Yep.
I didn't realise you actually had.
But we moved into questions. Yeah.
But do you still want to move it?
Yep.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Paula.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Sorry to go back to something that we have touched on, but I'm still not quite satisfied with the clarity of the answer that regards to how much is nominal. You mentioned you must know how many people go for remissions at the moment, so you would have quantified that. And you say dozens, but are you talking dozens per year over the 10-year period, or what are you talking about there?
We can. So basically, we get how many remissions do we get?
15 per year.
Yeah, but there's complex, multi-dimensional, involves Greg's team, consent planners, involve the infrastructure team, and involve external experts and so forth. So each one of those will have a resource commitment which is based on the difficulties or complexity of that remission. So I can't give you specific answers, but let's say $100,000 a year of revenue to offset those costs, and that would be a gut feel at this point in time.
Okay.
To be forced to quantify, which is not an unreasonable amount, Greg.
Yeah, it's ballpark. Yep.
So,
you're saying 100, best guess at this stage? No, in respect, it's a best guess. It's about 100 grand.
Best guess. So really, your 100,000. So really, what you're debating today, though, is probably financially, it's not going to have a huge impact on the budget, but more from a principle point of view. Do you believe it's appropriate or not, where there's a complex coming on board that a developer's seeking, whether staff time and assessing that remission should be recovered?
All right.
Is it caused by the developer or is it caused by council's policy is ultimately the question.
Okay, I'm determined not to use causal nexus for the next 4 days, but
I
just want to question, so this is basically segmenting off a section of our work that we are or are not to charge for. I assume you've looked at the legalities of all that, and I'm not challenging you on that, but I'm just wondering can we just suddenly pick an area of work that we decide we're going to charge for? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you can. The Act is silent on cost recovery for remissions. It's something that you're entitled to do if you wish.
Yep.
So it's purely a policy decision for you to make. The feedback from the development community was that it created a barrier to legitimate remissions being put in front of council for consideration.
Right.
And this would be a removal of a barrier and would be more developer friendly.
Okay.
It's a policy decision for you to make.
Right, so it's not something that we're at risk of being legally challenged on down the track?
Well, there's always a challenge around reasonableness.
Yeah.
And whether or not this of it warrants a challenge, I doubt, but right. it may come into an overall mix of unreasonableness. But of itself, if it's applied fairly and the fees and charges are fair and reasonable, I think it's unlikely to sustain or fall down through a legal challenge on its own.
And is this something that's done, last question, something that's done with other councils, or would this be unique to us?
I don't know the answer to that in the context of remissions, but generally speaking, fees and charges are a legitimate part of local government business. So there are fees and charges associated with all sorts of engagements with the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Comfortable?
Okay, so the motion's on the board. So I'll speak as the mover of the motion.
No, sorry, you didn't move the motion.
Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, apologies, Councillor.
Look, I don't have anything to say in the debate.
Okay. To me, it's simple. Some of these remissions are tens of millions of dollars. If a small application would be in thousands, and if somebody if there's no cost to it, why wouldn't you challenge it every time? If it's not costing you anything, why wouldn't you just tie up Greg's team in knots by challenging on the chance that you might get there? Because it's not costing you anything. It's costing you your time as the developer, but it's tying up Greg's team. And I just think that before you come in, you would sum up that it's going to cost you somewhere between $100 and $200 an hour of professional time, and you would consider that before you put your application in. So I believe that that's fair and reasonable that you would consider the costs of a challenge before you put it in. So I'll be voting against this motion. So we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is lost. 647 against.
So we'll now move to allocation, cost allocation, FE2 wastewater storage, page 200, paragraph 216 to 223. I'll move the staff recommendations, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Could you give us could you just jog our memories as to this item, please, in layman's language?
Yeah, sure. So council needs to allocate each of the projects in its schedule of assets, which is around 1,200. One of those projects is what is referred to as FE2 storage, which is a wastewater storage device, and
to a catchment, is that what we mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
It was allocated to infill and Ruakura. However, a submission which we agree with, following consultation with our engineers and our external engineers, that in fact it was more appropriately allocated in a wider area, because in fact it provided some benefit to Rototuna and some benefit to Ruakura and some benefit to the infill area. So that it was the recommendation is simply to give effect to that. We basically agree that that's a more appropriate allocation. Net effect of council is nil, because it's just changing where the costs are allocated. It doesn't have an overall financial impact. Andrew can give you more specific information if required.
Okay, so we'll go to debate. Is there any debate? It's on your page. Okay. Okay, so there is no debate. We'll go to the board to vote. He's a hangover from talking earlier.
You just want to carry on. You still got 3 minutes left of the speaking time.
The The motion is carried 10-4, 3 against.
Okay, so I'll now hand over to the Chief Executive on the next part of this.
Yeah, so before we go to the final resolution of receiving the report, I just want to put to councillors that those were the staff recommendations, and this is an opportunity for you to put forward any further recommendations or ask any further questions, I suppose, in response to what you've heard through the hearings and what you've read through the submissions and any other relevant factors. So, thank you.
I would just like response to the, and you kind of addressed it in workshops. Sorry, it was regarding the Peacock allocation of the roading money and who should gain the benefit of that. And the submitter said that the general ratepayer should gain the benefit of that, but the recommended schedule of DCs gave the benefit of the roading subsidy to the Peacock development itself. So I just want real firm clarity that it's legal what we've done and appropriate and all that sort of stuff. You might just say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, part of the reason why we've not recommended changing the way that the NZTA subsidy or the HIF loan for that is allocated is because to do so and to effectively spread the benefit beyond the catchment will have the effect of increasing the charges within the catchment, and that increase of the charges within the catchment would be unlawful because you're effectively artificially requiring more money to be paid by developers within the catchment than would ordinarily be required, and that of itself is more of a legal concern than the other way. So for that reason, it's not been recommended.
So in short, what we're doing is absolutely legally robust. The recommendation that was put forward in the submissions is not legally robust.
So they were a bit...
They were incorrect.
I mean, it was totally obviously them grinding their own axe, so I understand that, but I just want to make sure it was right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just asking a question about issue 17, which is on state integrated schools. And there
what
appears...
page and para are you on?
Oh, that's on 199. We seem to have jumped over that page to go to 200. So it's 199 to 200.
What paragraph?
Paragraphs 208 through to 215. And there appears to be an opportunity for a decision on this. Has this been overlooked or is it...
So the legislation provides an exemption for the Crown.
Yep, I understand that.
And any application that comes in, if it's not the Crown, then it's eligible for DCs. So under the State Services Act, that's a pretty comprehensive list of what is and what isn't defined as what we base it on. A state integrated school or a private school are not defined as the Crown. It has to be a state school that owns the land and building, where the state owns the land and building, so it would be automatically exempted. Yep. So this is just as a matter of course in assessing a DC. So in effect, this topic that we're talking about, if council was to provide for integrated schools getting a remission, they would just specifically be providing for that type of development, which then of course leads to what about a church, what about a community centre, etc., etc. So of course you can do it, but the recommendation is that the legislation and the policy deals, and yes, it does have to pay DCs, and so that's the recommendation from staff, is to keep doing that.
So what's the ruling around a private-public partnership, which is the new primary school out at Sylvester, which of course will be owned by the partnership until 35 years from now. What's the status? And obviously the Crown will have a lease, as I understand it, but not ownership.
Then it would be eligible for DCs.
It would be eligible?
It would be, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yep. We check that? Because I suspect that school has not, the board that's there has not included the payment of DCs in their business plan. Okay. Because they think they're assuming that they are being treated as a state school, which they are in one sense. I just I challenge that answer because I don't think there's enough checking being done on that.
Oh, so I haven't assessed that application. I'm just saying is that, I mean, the test is pretty strong. It's a state school who owns the land and owns the buildings, and so that's the criteria. So if the way you're describing it, it sounds like that's not the case. So my first guess would be that it wouldn't meet the test, but without, you know, seeing the specifics of it, I can't say definitively.
I agree with Dave. I think we should check it out because it is the first of its kind in the city, and I suspect that the board will think that it is owned by the Crown.
Or we'll think that the charges will assume that at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll look at that. We'll do some analysis and come back to you offline.
So is there a reason, given the format of this report, that we should be considering a vote on state integrated schools in the same way that we've considered a vote on each of the others, so that at least we're either firm one way that we retain it, or that we give an opportunity for councillors to debate whether or not state integrated schools should be exempt from DCs.
I'll respond to that. So the report, the way we work through is all those where there's been a staff recommendation to move away from what's in the draft budget. It hasn't referenced those where staff believe that the draft budget stands. That's why I've asked this question of asking now, which you rightly jumped in to. Is there anything else that councillors want to address? So that's the opportunity to go back and wash up all those items there wasn't a staff recommendation attached to.
Yeah, it just seems to me to be a little bit of an anomaly that state integrated schools do exactly the same thing as a state school, except they save the taxpayer from having to invest in the school land and buildings. And it just seems a little bit of an anomaly that they...
Question, not...
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll...
Just as a point of process, is that possible to delay that one until after lunch and try and get a bit of information on that? Because the councillors did say that they were interested in that submission because of the perceived unfairness. You know, no offence to Greg, he said he hasn't received an application yet, so the expectation... Yeah, and they have that sort of school elsewhere in the country.
Mr. Chair.
Will it change any outcome depending on the question, on the answer to your question?
It may do, because if it's being decided elsewhere, for instance, that a PPP school of the sort that Sylvester is not to be charged DCs because to all intents and purposes they're a state school, then there may be a move around the floor here to not charge state integrated schools. But if they are being charged successfully elsewhere, and that's...
There's a consistent policy, much more consistent.
So you might be looking for, Councillor Dave and Councillor Robbers, for a remission in the policy for where schools are significantly engaged in a partnership with the Crown, that they are eligible to receive the equivalent remissions that a Crown school would receive.
Not quite, because if we actually can charge Sylvester, then it's fair to charge the other one down the road. Probably. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the arguments here.
The legislation doesn't allow us to charge DCs on Crown schools, does it?
Yeah, that's right. We've taken some comprehensive advice on this because we've crossed this bridge several years ago. Quite nuanced, you know, hence the discussion. So we got some pretty comprehensive advice, and it just comes down to, is it the Crown as defined as the LGA intends? So that's really what we're trying to determine. So in the case of the school you're referring to, the question is Crown, you know, yes or no, that will determine DCs. And then if it's not the Crown and you as a council want to make an exception for that, then you would make an exception. But really we're just talking about, is it the Crown or not, which we could take advice on, and when we just look at objectively, obviously don't have any position on it, but it's an assessment.
Yeah, but it's consistency, I think, the point that Rob and I are leading towards. If we do it for one, we should do it for the other, or not.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. I think we are consistent. No, I think in terms of defining the Crown or not.
Yeah, so Just in the definition of where's the Crown, what the council are talking about is there a high level of fairness above here. So in this case, if a Crown school and a charter school or private school, integrated school, sorry, are doing exactly the same outcomes, doing exactly the same outputs, and the Crown wouldn't pay DCs, but in this case, because the structures result in them being non-Crown owned land or buildings, shouldn't they also be eligible to receive a similar sort of benefit through lower DCs? That's what the argument is the council is putting forward. The challenge is that we think, from a legislative point of view, the exclusion of Crown schools is actually disadvantages council because they do put a significant drain on demand, and they should pay DCs. And so effectively what happens is the ratepayers picking up for the growth associated with the decision to remit the DCs on state schools and not the taxpayer. So it's shifting the allocation.
I would argue hypothetically that if Sylvester School is rated by councils or that schools of that type, then we should charge DCs, then we should also charge DCs of the Catholic school. That's what I would argue, but I'm not convinced that we actually know whether we can would rate charge DCs of Sylvester.
So we can, depending where we're going to be, because we've got to...
Is it not possible for someone just to ring the ministry and find where there's some other schools like Sylvester and check out whether they've been charged DCs when they've been built?
Do we have any data on that, or can we do some quick reconnaissance on that? Do we have any? Has there been any other situations like Sylvester?
This is the first one in Hamilton.
No, I mean other areas.
Yeah, there are about 4 or 5 around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely do some research. That's no problem. Stafford probably has some more thoughts on this. I think you did some of the schools analysis, right?
Good morning, Stafford. Well, afternoon, sorry.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors. I think the question comes down to everyone who generates demand on council's network, we will attempt to charge DCs for. The problem comes around that the Crown has specifically exempted themselves from paying it.
We know that.
So with regard to the schools, I'm not sure if we can charge the school that you were suggesting in Sylvester, but if we can, we will charge it.
Yeah, but we know that that's not the question.
But why? But if you can't charge Sylvester, why are you charging the integrated schools?
Yep. Okay. So we're just going to. Can we just do a?
So it's about fairness and consistency.
Yep.
I
So
think more than just fairness.
So this is a question between a school that's effectively a PPP versus an integrated school. Can we just do a bit of assessment on that in terms of trying to get around how the structure of a Catholic school is and owning the land and so forth versus the PPP at Sylvester, and then we can come back to councillors with a response on that.
It's not so much the problem of the Catholic school. We know the status there.
Yep.
It's the question of the private public partnership schools where a private entity owns the land, buildings, but puts a state school on them that it leases to the state. And and that's
so I can say at least consistently we would always charge in that situation. Every time. So if we've got that wrong, then we will revisit it. But in the situation you're describing, we would charge every time and we would not charge at school. Well, so I guess that's what we're doing. It's not.
If we have got it wrong, are we able to at any stage revisit the Catholic school charge then for sake of consistency? I mean,
so
I'm sorry, but the answers we're getting are desktop answers.
Yeah. So
not
what
reality.
We can do. There's nothing precluding us from making changes to this policy right up until 30th of June, right? So to make sure that we're actually, because we've done the consultation, this isn't significant, it's not going to slow us down here. Now, we'll go check for consistency, we'll go check for previous examples and what we've done and what we've done and whether we've done it wrong. We will try and have a conversation with those councillors that are particularly interested in it to make sure everyone's on the right page. Councillor Dave and Councillor Rob are 2 of those, but we'll let everyone know when that conversation is going to happen. And if any change is required to the policy to ensure there's the fairness we're trying to achieve needs to be achieved, we'll put it in and make sure that's a clear change before we get to the final adoption. That way we're not slowing the process down at this stage, and also avoids that concern you've got, Dave, about responses shooting from the hip rather than actually detailed analysis.
Well, just a little bit of analysis.
Okay, a little bit of analysis, which is like half a page of bullet points.
So will you come back to us and tell us when you will report back?
Yep. So we'll do a bit of analysis on the whole school ownership and so forth, integrated PPP, all that sort of stuff. and make it really clear how it works as well and what we're currently doing. So that doesn't have to be done for today. We'll just do it in the next few days and come back to the councillors. There is just talking to my team, we made a decision earlier to remove caps on rota carry. I wasn't aware the word rota carry was in there. I wanted all caps removed. There are caps, very small caps floating around rota tuner and so forth. They're small, it's negligible, but the intent of the Mayor at that stage was that all caps were removed. Rota carry was included in the resolution though, and so what I've got is another resolution that I'm recommending that is done, that all caps are removed, other catchments, and that just sweeps up. And just to assure councillors, there's no significant caps in those areas, it's just little marginal caps. Can you describe some of them so councillors get some context? And if I'm not moving this, I have no authority to do it. I'm just saying if the Mayor wishes to wrap everything up, this would do it.
So does it require governance manager for us to revoke the earlier motion?
You don't need to do that because this is all other areas, so it's not. It's just a standalone motion. It's a standalone motion.
It adds to the one that's already there.
It's very okay. So basically, there was I thought when I asked for it to be written, it was remove all caps. I didn't look over my shoulder and note that it was all other caps with rota carry included in the instruction, and neither did the Mayor when he did it either. So I'm just saying that if we want to tidy it up to what the intent of the resolution was, rather than going back and revoking and repassing it, this is a standalone motion that can achieve the same outcome. But there's nothing stopping anyone. It's not contradicting or changing the previous one, because the previous one was specifically focused on rota carry. This is all other catchments. We can list them if it's easier. Pick that up.
So do you, sorry.
I'll move seconded by Deputy Mayor. Councillor Paula.
Actually, my question is one of process, I think, because there are a number, and I wasn't here, I was in Wellington on Tuesday when you discussed decision by exception.
So hang on, can we just clear this one up first?
Well, okay.
And then we'll go back to, Paula, we will come back to where we were. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So are there any questions on what's been put up? Councillor Gary?
CBD is not considered caps, they are remissions, aren't they? So that's not...
Right,
okay.
so we charge them when we remit them, whereas this one just restricts the level to which we charge.
Okay. It's not a cap of zero.
Okay, so we'll go to debate. Is there any debate? Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried 10-4, 3 against.
Okay, so apologies, Councillor Paula. It's going
so
back. So we're going back to.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the ones. There were all these ones on the list, and then as Rob pointed out, there were a number of ones. Schools were one, but there's on page 196 realised HUIs, and also a couple of other little ones that have just been not touched upon at all. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that approach because I think the submitters and public expect us to debate all relevant issues. Having said that, is it your intention that if we don't sing up about something that's in the report, it'll all be moved by exception, as you proposed on Tuesday?
That's correct.
So
we expect that you would have read the report, and anything in there, this is the opportunity now to bring anything up that's concerning for you or that you want to discuss further.
Okay, so why... I think I would have liked to have heard debate and discussion on realised HUIs, and there was one other on a bedroom, the bedroom charging. Because if we don't discuss bedroom charging, what's the position? The default position is we provide refunds instead of credits. We do not charge for residential developments based on bedrooms. Is that the default position?
What paragraph are you for?
Page 194, 195. Because we didn't turn to that page, I just want to make sure what's the default position.
So the general approach was if there was no change to the proposed policy, then submission theme, all the key main submission themes were addressed, but where there was no change, staff recommended change from the proposed policy, they weren't included in the main recommendations because they're, you know, status quo.
Well,
so,
the status quo from the proposal point of view, not necessarily
correct.
a previous position.
That's right, yeah. And so we anticipate, you know, there was, I think as set out at the start, that debate on anything, including anything not in those 20 issues, but the topics we've discussed are the ones where a change is being proposed.
So can I just check then that...
Just Paula, can I just jump in? I'll just hand over to the Democracy Manager for may help with clarity.
Just a quick thing that may help. So in the report, you'll notice in all the tables that the DC team have provided, some of the statements with the word retain. So that's your clue that that's the statement that is included in the consultation document. So that effectively is the default position if another statement in those tables is not moved or anything else you've amended up with. So
okay, so in that case, can I please ask for some discussion? Can I ask some questions around page 194 around the residential developments based on number of bedrooms? I can do that, yeah? At this point? Yes. Okay, thank you. So in respect to that, because that was a big area of submission from developers, will this proposal, retaining this policy approach, will this have a detrimental effect or a positive effect on the diversity of housing supply? In other words, not only small homes, which we do need, the 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, but also the bigger family homes. What impact will the bedroom charge have on the nature and shape of houses that will be built, please, in your view?
So I think it's, you know, based on the way it's charged, it would incentivise smaller houses, you would think, in terms of it's cheaper to, you know, the DC charge is lower for a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, but in terms of housing preference studies and, you know, developer, you know, profits in terms of does that $10,000 or $15,000 difference change the way that they want to roll out developments? Again, it's tricky to answer that conclusively. What I would say though is that over the long run, it doesn't change council's recovery, so it's net even there, and it achieves, we believe it will achieve the equity around demand. So it may have an effect on typology and how, you know, in what way people develop, but yeah, it's been considered, but it hasn't been identified as a key factor in the decision. So we don't know enough to you know, to change that recommendation in terms of achieving those other more fundamental things.
So I understand the impact financially, being nil there. I'm interested, like you say, more to do with the typology. Now, given that land value itself, this is a question, land value is a part of the issue in terms of developers being able to make a margin of profit on their development. That's been one of the issues on them building the smaller houses in the first place, isn't it? The land value. They have to put a bigger house on their land to so how does this impact on that?
Well, if you look at Greenfield, we know that the vast majority of Greenfield, or the majority of Greenfield dwellings, are 4+ bedrooms.
Yeah.
So my guess is that wouldn't change as a result of this. You know, there are some developments that have 3-bedroom, but I think there are other factors that drive these decisions more than stages and DCs. This is really designed to provide, you know, equity in terms of people building bed sits with 1 or 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. You know, people in high density houses, as well as charging appropriately for large houses in greenfield areas. So I understand your question, and I partly not answering it because I don't know exactly the answer. But I think, yeah, it may have an effect, but it's just I can't answer definitively as to whether it will change, you know, people's investment decisions.
Yeah, that makes it difficult. I'm not going to put up a motion to do not change because I don't think I'd get support for it. Note that I probably wouldn't have supported this change to a bedroom-based approach at this time.
Okay, are there any other members who have anything else that they want to ask questions on this policy?
Yeah, I just have one. It's following on from Paula, thank you. the whole reason for going from the current process to the bedroom was it was a still inaccurate, but a more accurate way of assessing the demand that a certain house drew on our services. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what drove the whole thing.
That's right.
So it's all about being blind as to what sort of
Gary,
outcome
question, please. Question.
So I'm certain. Am I correct in saying it's all about making sure that we're more accurate in getting contributions from a development based on its demand on our services, because we think the number of bedrooms is a more accurate, not totally accurate, but a more accurate way of assessing demand than the current process?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any more questions on the DC policy before we wrap it up with the final vote? Okay, so we'll now move through to general, which is on the bottom of page 3. And I'll move, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. The staff recommendation. So there are no questions. Yes, sure. Yep.
Suggest, Mayor Andrew, that we put the integrated school an exception to that perhaps there's an opportunity to reconsider what we've already approved today, but we haven't around integrated state schools, given the lack of information available to us.
So, Councillor, can I respond?
Or is that
Mr. Mayor, to that particular question?
You've got your non-integrated schools as well.
No. So, Councillor Rob, the way that the motions are being worded, it keeps it all right open. So, basically, all the previous ones were subject to the base budget. We proposed these changes, so it was a delta approach, changes too. Yep. All it's doing is just acknowledging, it doesn't actually adopt the policy, it's just acknowledging we go away and prepare it. So there's nothing stopping you coming along with further changes at a later stage on that. So
it doesn't approve the previous motions?
We've already approved as changes, as exceptions. It hasn't restricted you or precluded you from making another motion another stage, including on the last day of the budget when we adopt it, to change for integrated schools. So we haven't snookered you from that outcome.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'm relaxed about that.
And just, Greg, were you going to work on that
yes,
query?
I've got a plan.
So
come back.
There's not just your integrated schools. There's your non-integrated schools, and there's your colleges as well. Your private colleges and your non-integrated colleges, and your integrated as well. So you need to capture all education. And not just integrated schools, that's too specific.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
So just following on, so I'm absolutely clear, this is subject to the decisions we make later on.
No, so it's not subject to anything. All we've done is voted on changes to the draft policy that went out for consultation. So we will change this, we won't change this, we will change this. So basically, it's just changes only. This final resolution notes the proposed policy is scheduled to be adopted at 28th of June. Got it. It's just a little wedge at the back end, just to sandwich what we've done, but it's only a very small sandwich.
Chocks under the wheel, as it were.
Yeah, a little chock under the wheel, and just to let you guys know what our process is. But you can, we're leaving the door open. There's no
trickery.
There's no trickery. Well, there's trickery, but
but not that I can see.
And then, Greg, just going back to where I was, there's your government-owned kindergartens and your private kindergartens as well. They're all part of the whole education sector that needs to be looked at as a whole, and in parts, depending on where we end up. So.
Yep, I'll draft the memo, perhaps.
Yep, thank you.
Oh, private hospitals.
Yeah,
I think I know what to do. I'll come back to you with a memo, and then we can discuss that further.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go to the board to vote. Sorry, debate. I just didn't have anybody up for debate, but yes, Councillor Paula.
Thank you. I just want to put on record why I'm going to vote against this, not because I disagree with all parts of it whatsoever, and I know we do come back to it later, but I have some discomfort with some parts, especially in respect to the recovery of CapEx outside the 10-year period, which I think is not appropriate and puts it as legal risk. I've supported the longer phasing out of the CBD remission, and quite frankly, I think I made it quite clear I would like that to have been extended a year or two more, but that's okay. You don't get everything you want. I have some concerns about the per bedroom cost. At the end of the day, in a period of the high growth that Council is experiencing at the moment, we want to put everything in front of those people who build houses to make it possible. And I do have some concerns about anything that might inadvertently slow down that development drive. That's why I'm a huge fan of the special housing areas, for that matter, which I have been for over 2 years before we even had some on the table. I'm also just flagging that, and it'll come up again in the Peacock debate, that I have concerns about us not having discussed sufficiently how we influence the price of land, because while the price of land, and these reports acknowledge it has gone up and it's going up, while the price of land remains so high, all of these things impact upon that and the cost of the final house. To me, I'm certain that we're building houses that people can actually afford, and I still retain some concern about that. So I like parts, I've voted in support parts, but overall I have to vote against the whole for now.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much. Mayor Andrew, you might have noticed that I've voted against everything so far because as a new councillor and going through this process for the first time, I just felt for the last 18 months I've just been railroaded. I've been talked at in briefings. There was never a chance for a robust discussion.
Excuse me, councillor.
Am I not allowed to say that?
No, you're off subject. Where you need to look at the recommendation and talk to the recommendation, please.
Okay. I am not allowed to have an opinion. Okay. Well, then I just want to say why I'm voting against this.
It's very clear in standing orders that you don't attack other elected members.
Oh, did I attack any? I did.
But it's off subject as well, so just.
I didn't attack anybody. I did not attack anybody. What I just want to say is, with this whole, I don't think we actually, it's a fair process for our residents and ratepayers. I don't think I have done them true justice and with this process, and I really feel for them what the decisions we're making today, whether we have discussed them properly or not. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Gary, could you please stay on subject to this policy and what we're voting on and what the recommendation is on the board?
Will do, yep. I'm a bit like some other people around here. There's good bits and there's bad bits in this policy. I'm not supportive of the CBD remissions. I'm pleased we've removed caps on Rotokauri. But on balance, I think we are still moving closer to growth paying for growth, and I think that the moves we've made today have achieved that, and I think I'm comfortable in supporting this, even though I don't approve of the CBD remission policy. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Yes, on the same theme as Councillor Gary, this is about whether you really think growth should pay for growth, and you should be ensuring your council policies as far as possible follow that principle. Hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of submitters to the council from existing ratepayers said they did not think they should have to be paying for what was happening. The infrastructure was going into growth areas. The collection of resolutions we've passed do that. Some do it faster than others, which is one of the points Gary was mentioning. But overall, they say growth should pay for growth, much more than we've previously done. I don't think those hundreds of submitters and the thousands of others who've been on social media around the place complaining about that they think the costs of peacocks or Rotokauri will be visited on existing ratepayers, they're not going to thank people who vote against this motion.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Yep, look, I support this today, and I'm pretty happy with it overall. And actually think I'm concerned about what Siggy says, and I'm listening to her, but I do think, in fact, the ratepayers actually, this is actually a good thing for the ratepayers, because what we're actually doing is we're actually proposing a fair allocation of the costs of development. That's what we're doing. So, and I am concerned a little bit. We've had dozens of briefings, and staff have worked extremely hard to get information in front of us, and I think we have a responsibility as elected members to get our heads around it. We're paid to do that job, and it's a hard job to do. So, you know, we're halfway through the term, and I think it's a case of we've got to get on with it and do the best we can. So I don't agree with you on that. I think we have had a chance, and we have to work hard on this job. And so I just want to say that I do dispute that. So yeah, I'm pleased with this, and I'm looking forward to it getting out there, and we'll see what the developers have to say about it. But it's a step in the right direction for me.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Short and sweet. On balance, I support this, but the one thing I am against was the Central City developers having a free ride for such a long time, and that not collecting from them is actually going back on the ratepayer. We were elected in here to look after the ratepayers' money, not just the developers. So that's the only thing I'm really against in this proposal. So on balance, like I said, I'm supporting it.
Councillor Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I wasn't going to say anything, because I certainly had my debate early on. But look, a development policy is about giving a surety and certainty on how we want and how we can indeed afford the city to grow and to build. And I come back to my argument around the affordability of building desperately needed homes that we require. This is more than just where we put the costs of that development, because at the end of the day, a policy like this will push those costs back onto the residents if developers continue to build homes, which we heard that they are going to possibly look elsewhere. So I think it's a red herring to suggest that this is all about growth, paying for growth, because we heard through submissions developers will simply not be able to absorb the significant increase to cost that this policy proposes, and they will pass that on. And the end customer, the end game here, is the person, the resident living in our city, purchasing that home. So they will pick up that cost, and I think it's very wrong and very dangerous to assume that they won't.
So the road from Auckland to Hamilton is nearly complete. It'll be finished in 2020 or earlier, and that's going to bring the distance between the two cities very, very close when there's no traffic on the road to under an hour. And this is a big change, and there'll also be a train going from Hamilton to Auckland. Thank you, Councillor Dave. And the prices of properties in Hamilton is very likely to increase, as it does anywhere around the world when it's easier to connect to other centres. The price of the real estate in those areas does rise. And where I'm heading here is, it is time in this city that developers paid their way. There's been a huge amount of money being made in the city in the last few years by developers, and should the ratepayer be subsidising the developer? No, there's no secret that I am fully pro-developers, but they have to pay their way. They do build their city, they do risk everything to build their city, but they need to pay their way. We're facing a huge rate increase here, and the people that's particularly going to hurt are the mums and dads in the houses in the city and pay rates, or those who pay rent, and their rent will go up to cover this, and we just haven't been paying our way. And this is all tied up around DCs. The DCs have been coming in, we've been counting the DCs as revenue, and as well as that, on top of that, we haven't been collecting enough DCs in the first place to cover the cost of these growth sales. And with this policy that we're about to vote on, all that will change. And that's the right thing to do for the mums and dads who live in our city, of allocating the costs from development to the right as much as we can. I also just want to touch on the fact that this is democracy, and today we've voted on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things, and yes, some of them I might not totally agree with or might not be on board. But you've got to look at the whole, because if each one of us around this table vote down each item because there's one thing somewhere in it we don't like, by the time we get to the end of this whole policy, none of us are going to be voting it through in the end. So sometimes we just have to accept that there are things in democracy that go through that aren't our number one choice, aren't what we want. But that's exactly what democracy is working together and going with the majority. Thank you. We'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried, 10-4-3 against.
Okay, I think before we stop for lunch, we'll just get a wrap up from our staff on exactly what the effects are of where we've got to this point, and then we'll stop for lunch. So, okay. So, who is it? Whose team is it? Who does Stephen. Stephen, thank you. Greg and your team, thank you very much. You've done a lot of hard work on this. It's a radical change from where we've been going, and just thank you to you and your disciples for getting heads around this, for giving us the information, and yeah, and conveying it very clearly to us. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Mayor Andrew.
Either's fine.
Sorry, I've been distracted. As a result of the decisions on the DCs, we've updated the graphs, so this is the balance of books in year 1, and the rate increases dropped from 15.7 to 15. The DCs doesn't have a great effect on the balancing the books. It's that 35% impact of some extra revenue. Hence the small change. But it does have a big impact on our debt, and we have a $63 million reduction in debt. And so if Brett makes a change to lift the capital program up to 230%, then that's a bigger decrease because of the extra headroom we have in debt. And so 12.7 reduces to 11.2. So if you're looking at that scenario, there's the extra debt headroom creates option 3, yes, for later in the agenda, and the little effect on balancing the books. So.
I will just let Stephen finish first.
I've finished.
You finished? Okay. Yes, Councillor Paula.
In respect to the debt that exists now is work we've already been done. So you're saying that not going forward and getting greater amount of development levies in the future is going to slow down our ability to pay down that debt? Is that what you meant by that?
No, it's the other way around. Extra DCs means faster debt repayment. The program hasn't changed.
Yeah, and I get that.
So we're still spending the same amount of money, but we're getting DCs in sooner.
Yeah.
And so that enables debt repayment, which creates debt capacity.
And you're saying that's not going to happen at the moment?
I'm saying that is happening as a result of the decisions you've just made.
Which is good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Stephen, why are we getting up to the 230 if cumulatively the DCs that are rolling it, the new rate of DC is not progressively bringing that blue line down where it's just touching the 230%? You know, I would have thought there would have been a cumulative effect. You know, I know that we're still spending on capital projects, but the faster repayment of debt as a result of more DCs would have brought that blue line down, and I can't quite read the
Brett,
years
can you
there.
change to the 15.7? No.
So what are we doing?
So we're just going back to the balance of books in 1 year, and you'll see that the debt is going down.
Okay,
but because there's two main options in the
okay, I can see
for
now.
later in the meeting.
You've answered my question now. Yeah.
Okay.
You're already preempting in the impact of reducing the rate increase.
Yeah.
And its effect on debt. Yep.
Our two graphs, our two financial strategy graphs represent. One of them is to balance the books in year 1, and the other one is to stay under 230%.
Yep.
And so we're showing you the rate increase throughout this meeting of those two options.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you for asking the question. It got me up there. Got me caught up as well.
Yeah, it had me too. Okay, so thank you. We'll stop for lunch until 1:30. Okay, 20 to 2. 22. Okay, I think that's fine. So 20 to 2, we'll be back here. Thank you.